Chapter 377. As Zhuge Kongming's voice fell, dark clouds appeared in the sky. Bam, 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 bam. Along with 8 sonic booms, 8 huge 8 trigrams pillars fell from the sky. With Attila as the center, the 8 trigrams pillars fell in 8 directions around him. In an instant, an invisible force spread out, and Attila stopped in his tracks. A formation. Although Attila had been acting like a berserker and always wanted to destroy, he was still the king of the Hun Empire, the god's whip Attila who had conquered Europe. Attila had also dabbled in the military of the East. The unknown force of this formation did indeed stop Attila's footsteps. It's useless, destroy. Attila raised the war god's sword in his hand as he spoke. Suddenly, Zhuge Kongming's formation was broken. Have you forgotten my existence, Zhuge Liang? The blonde girl in an ancient robe rode a chariot not far from Attila. She was the rider, Sima. She was the one who held Attila's command charm. On the other hand, Zhuge Kongming's Karazuno gene was countered by Sima Yi's primordial chaos array. Sima, you really are a hindrance. Zhuge Kongming knew that Sima Yi was nearby, but he did not expect her to do the same as he did. Then you can return to the martyr's palace with peace of mind, Zhuge Liang. Sima Yi said provocatively. You should have sensed that our master has been defeated, and we are no longer restrained by him. Zhuge Kongming said calmly. You want to ask why I continue to follow orders, right? It's because you are here, Zhuge Liang. Sima Yi sneered. Even if I disappear and return to the martyr's palace, it was not easy to meet you in the Holy Grail War. The shame of the empty city stratagem will be washed away here. In the name of the command charm, Saber Attila, release your noble charm. Sima Yi raised her right hand, and one of the remaining 2 command charms on the back of her hand disappeared. Attila silently raised the war god's sword in his hand. Destruction. The war god's sword began to spin, emitting a rainbow light. Zhuge Kongming took a light puff of his cigar. He was ready to leave the stage. After all, the war god's sword was not something he could withstand. Clank! Suddenly, a shield appeared in front of Zhuge Kongming. Matthew raised his shield and prepared to block Attila's noble phantasm. Are you an idiot? His noble phantasm is the war god's sword. You're not mature enough yet, so you won't be able to block it. Zhuge Kongming shook his head helplessly. But we can't abandon our companions. Grazzi walked to Zhuge Ming's side. Anyway, we're in the attack range of the opponent's noble phantasm. Since we can't escape, then let's not escape. Olga Marie crossed her arms and said proudly. I don't believe them, but that man. Steno smiled. If it's that man, I'm sure he'll be able to save me in times of danger, just like Astelius. Euryale stroked Astelius's horn. That man? I'm looking forward to it as well. Zhuge Kongming took another puff of his cigar. With that, Attila swung the war god's sword, and a rainbow-colored stream of light rushed towards Grazzi and the others. Matthew! Grazzi shouted. Senpai! Mashu inserted the shield into the ground. Lord Chaldeas, simulating the beginning of humanity. In an instant, a huge wall of chalk appeared, protecting everyone behind it. Boom! The colorful stream of light hit the holy chalk wall, and Matthew struggled to resist it. Her teeth were clenched, her body was trembling, but she didn't move. She was sweating profusely. All of these represented Mashu's difficulties at the moment. Thinking about Olga Marie's words, Grazzi walked to Matthew and held his hand. Hang in there, Matthew. Block the enemy's noble phantasm. 2 of the 3 command charms on the back of Grazzi's hand disappeared. Looking at Grazzi's determined eyes and feeling the endless power that came from nowhere, Matthew smiled and nodded heavily. Along with Matthew's shout, the chalk wall became more real and complete, and the shape of the outer wall was faintly visible. Boom! The power of the war god's sword reached the end, leaving a regretful sound on the chalk wall that it did not break. The 7-colored radiance was blocked, and the god's whip was blocked by the holy chalk wall. How is it possible? Sima Yi looked at the shield that blocked the war god's sword in surprise. If that's the case, let's do it again. Sima Yi said, raising the back of his hand again. That's it. Suddenly, Wu Ming's voice came. The sound of flesh being pierced by a sharp blade sounded, and Sima Yi's heart and soul core were pierced. Sima Yi spat out a mouthful of blood, looked at the platinum blade that went through his body, and turned to look at the assassin. I see King Arthur lost. Sima Yi's body began to glow, and little blue particles were emitted from Sima Yi's body, which was a sign that he was about to leave. Damn it. What a pity. Zhuge Liang. Saying that, Sima Yi turned into magic and disappeared. Wu Ming put away the sword of salvation and looked at Attila. Destroy. Attila said, and ran toward Wu Ming. But in the process, Attila's body began to dissipate, and Attila was about to leave. Attila looked at Wu Ming's left hand and understood. I see, so the Holy Grail war is over. Wu Ming's left hand held a small golden cube that looked like a Holy Grail. It was the Holy Grail that Wu Ming defeated Artoria. Attila was forced to return to the Martyr's Palace. Attila, God's whip, it's time for you to go back. Go back to your Martyr's Palace and continue to dream. Wu Ming said something strange and raised the Holy Grail. Attila did not say anything and waited quietly. With Wu Ming's unknown manipulation, Attila's body instantly collapsed, and he turned into pure magic and disappeared. At this time, the holy chalk wall disappeared, revealing the faces of Gadazi and the others. Assassin! Olga Marie and Gadazi shouted in surprise. Senior assassin! Matthew was supported by Gadazi, and he said weakly, but Matthew's voice was full of joy. That man is finally here. Stheno smiled. That's too slow, Euryale said. Oh, cried Asterios, not knowing what was going on. He really came, but it's finally over. Zhuge Kongming breathed out a mouthful of smoke and relaxed. The chaotic Holy Grail War of the 21 Servants. Chapter 378. Indeed, out of the 22 servants, only 7 of us are left. Saver Wu Ming, Shielder Matthew, Assassin Stheno, Archer Euryale, Berserker Asterios, Lancer Anna, and Caster Zhuge Kongming. Wu Ming walked to the side of the crowd, holding a glowing golden Holy Grail in one hand. This glowing object is the Holy Grail that caused the chaos in this era. I temporarily used the Holy Grail to stabilize this singularity, so this singularity has not been repaired yet. In other words, you can control this singularity at will? Zhuge Kongming said lightly. Wu Ming became the guy who controlled this singularity. Zhuge Kongming meant that if Wu Ming wanted to, he could become the king of this era. Of course, not to mention Stheno and Euryale, even Gadazi and the others didn't think that Wu Ming would choose to become the king of this singularity. Zhuge Kongming was not familiar with Wu Ming, so he deliberately said that. If Wu Ming didn't mean that, then everyone would be happy, and Zhuge Kongming would be relieved. If Wu Ming had such intentions, he was now the king of this singularity anyway. Zhuge Kongming did not have the ability to defeat Wu Ming, so there was no harm in saying a few words before he died. I'm not interested in becoming the king. You think too much, military counselor. Wu Ming shook his head lightly. Now, looking at Wu Ming holding the Holy Grail, whether it was Olga, Marie, and the others, or Roman, who was projected on the screen, they were all relieved. After all, if Wu Ming really wanted to do that, they really couldn't do anything. That's great, then our mission is complete. Roman had a lazy look on his face. You better cheer up, Roman. Even if all the enemies are destroyed, you can't be so lazy. Olga Marie instantly reprimanded Roman. Roman could only nod speechlessly. Yes. I know, Director. Did Mr. Kukulin and the others also leave? Matthew asked Wu Ming. Yes, whether it's Karna, Gilgamesh, or Kukulin, they all left. I haven't thanked them yet, Matthew said with some regret. Don't worry, Matthew. You have already formed a destiny, and you will meet again. Wu Ming smiled and comforted Matthew. Yes, Assassin Senpai. Matthew's sorrow turned into joy and nodded with joy. By the way, where is Professor Lev? Gadazi suddenly asked. Everyone then looked at Wu Ming. If it's Lev, he's dead on the surface. Wu Ming's words puzzled everyone. What did he mean by dead on the surface? I'll show you the image directly. With that, Wu Ming raised the Holy Grail, and instantly, the light shone brightly, drowning everyone. When everyone opened their eyes because it was too dazzling, the scene in front of them changed, from the forest at the foot of the mountain to a maze of tall pine trees and rocks. Is this an image? Olga Marie saw Wu Ming's trick and didn't panic. Image? Gadotsi scratched the back of her head. That's right, it's a projection. I've recreated the scene of my battle with Leviticus. After Silent Wonder finished speaking, a towering pillar appeared behind everyone. This thing is a demon god pillar, right? Zhuge Kongming looked indifferently at this huge pillar of flesh that was filled with eyes and said in detail, Demon god pillar? Roman was a little surprised. What's wrong, doctor? Matthew looked at Roman, who was unnatural on the screen. Nothing, I just learned about this thing through learning magic. I didn't expect the mythical product to reappear. Roman smiled slightly and quickly adjusted his state. However, Wu Ming glanced at him indifferently. As early as Wu Ming saw Roman for the first time, Wu Ming felt a little unnatural from Roman. Now that he had become a saver, silent cries saw through Roman's nature. This demon god pillar is the demon god Floros, the 72 demon gods under the command of the demon king Solomon. It appeared in the form of a demon god pillar. Wu Ming didn't say anything but began to explain the origin of the demon god pillar. Demon king Solomon? Olga Marie looked at the pillar of flesh in distress and couldn't help but suspect that the real mastermind behind the scenes was the heroic spirit Solomon. Immediately, Wu Ming's figure appeared in front of everyone, but Wu Ming's figure wasn't the current golden white clothes, but the black windbreaker and black hat from before. Then, the demon god pillar began to release the demon mist to attack Wu Ming. However, everyone found that they couldn't hear the sound. At such a close distance, the sound of the demon god pillar is a little too strong for humans, so I omitted the sound. Wu Ming explained. Although Zhuge Kongming and Roman didn't seem to believe it, they didn't say anything. Wu Ming did this for a reason. The conversation between Wu Ming and the demon god pillar involved the issue of Wu Ming's identity. Gadotsi and the others had already suffered a lot, so Wu Ming felt that it was better to tell them later. Because Wu Ming omitted the scene of his conversation with Lev, Wu Ming had already used the inherent barrier. As the scene changed, everyone's surroundings turned into a foggy city. Ah, this is Assassin's inherent barrier. As someone who had been here before, Gadotsi explained to everyone. I know you've been here before. Take a good look. Olga Marie violently pressed Gadotzi's little head and said rather unhappily, Ouch, ouch, ouch. After that, the demon mist swallowed Wu Ming, and Wu Ming used the Holy Grail and command incantation to change his class. In the end, he used the sun, condensed from the blade of salvation to defeat Leviticus. After the projection ended, everyone returned to the foot of the Yuanzhong mountain. Even if Lev had committed a heinous crime, he was still Chaldea's former companion, so Wu Ming didn't let them see the scene of Lev's body being burned to ashes by Wu Ming. Just like that, Lev died, but Floros didn't. Wu Ming shrugged. So that's how it is. Lev's apparent death means that the demon god pillar is still alive. Zhuge Kongming nodded. According to the demon god Floros, their demon god pillar is a whole, so I think Floros is still alive. Since demon god Floros is still alive, Lev is very likely not completely dead. After all, Lev is the personality of demon god Floros' human body. Wu Ming said solemnly. In other words, Olga Marie thought of something. In other words, we are likely to encounter Lev in our future operations. Roman said what Olga Marie was thinking. There's no other way. Romani, you're responsible for contacting the people of the Magic Association and let them support us. Olga Marie said as if she was entrusting an orphan. Leader, it couldn't be helped. Even if they were comforted by Wu Ming, everyone still didn't think that Lev was lying when he said that Olga Marie was dead. The fact couldn't be changed, and Olga Marie had begun to accept it. At least, she had to do what she had to do while she was alive. Excuse me, even if Olga Marie can return to Chaldea, you can't contact the Magic Association in the outside world, because the world outside Chaldea has been completely burned. Chapter 379. What? Upon hearing Wu Ming's words, not only were Olga Marie and Roman shocked, but even Gadazi and Matthew, who weren't nervous at all. You guys don't know? Wu Ming asked in a confused tone. How would we know? Hurry up and explain it to me. Olga Marie walked up to Wu Ming agitatedly and pulled on Wu Ming's collar. Ahem. Calm down, calm down. Wu Ming tried to break free from Olga Marie's grip, trying to calm her down. Leader, please calm down. Matthew pulled Olga Marie's arm and tried to calm her down. Olga Marie glanced at Matthew, calmed down, and let go of Wu Ming. Let me explain. Wu Ming adjusted his collar and began to explain what he had just said. Just like Winterwood City, the world outside Chaldea has all been burned down. The reason why Chaldea detected that all humans were wiped out in 2018 is because all humans were burned down at that time. The mastermind behind this is what you think it is, the magic King Solomon who controls the 72 demon gods. Stheno, Euryale, and Anna brought Sakura, Madhu, and Asterios to stand behind Chaldea's group. This was related to Gadazi and the others, so as servants, it was better for them to step back and listen. If that's the case, I guess the world outside this city has also become a sea of fire. Zhuge Kong Ming lit up another cigar and explained in detail. After all, as a wise man, Zhuge Kong Ming and Chaldea's group listened to Wu Ming's explanation in the front row. Zhuge Kong Ming is correct. That's because this great fire started in the era of Kanagawa and continued all the way to the year 2018, which is when all of humanity was destroyed. The reason there was a delay is because Chaldea still exists. The reason why Chaldea is fine is because of the influence of its own magnetic field, which preserved the hair color of Chaldea. No wonder we couldn't contact the Magic Association, and no wonder none of the people sent to the Magic Association came back or contacted Chaldea. It's not that there's a problem with the equipment, but that the people sent were all burned. Roman said thoughtfully. That's right. Other than Winterwood City, there are 7 new singularities in history. Roman, go check Sheba and see if I'm right. Wu Ming then revealed another shocking piece of information. Excuse me for a moment. With that said, Roman's figure disappeared from the screen. After about 10 seconds, Roman's figure reappeared on the screen. Assassin is right. The singularities shown on Sheba didn't disappear. Instead, there are 7 new singularities. However, we can't analyze the locations of the singularities, so we don't know where they are, Roman said seriously. Romani, analyze the positions of the 7 singularities immediately. Olga Marie ordered, and Romani hurriedly went to carry out the task. Yes, Director. However, Roman didn't turn off the screen. Instead, he turned it on and analyzed the singularities with the rest of Chaldea's staff. 7 singularities, without any backup. Olga Marie bit her nails and thought about Wu Ming's words with a headache. She was also worried about Chaldea's future. No one chose to doubt Wu Ming's words. Roman found evidence on Sheba, and it clearly showed that there were 7 singularities. What's wrong? Are you scared by just 7 singularities? Wu Ming mocked. Gadazi and Matthew were a little surprised. After all, Wu Ming wasn't the kind of person who would mock his companions. Olga Marie was like a barrel of dynamite. She would explode at the slightest provocation. She angrily refuted Wu Ming. Needless to say, Olga Marie's provocation worked very well. You bastard! Who's scared? It's just 7 singularities. I'll let Tachika and Matthew fix it for you. What about you two? Wu Ming looked at Matthew and Gadazi. I'll do whatever Senior says. Matthew looked at Gadazi with trust. Seeing Matthew like this, Gadazi was touched. I'll take Matthew to open the 7 singularities. We definitely will, Gadazi said energetically. Wu Ming smiled. In that case, I have nothing to worry about. Then, it's time for us to return to the Martyr's Palace, Zhuge Kong Ming said, looking at Wu Ming. After the Holy Grail War ended, Attila returned to the Martyr's Palace, but Zhuge Kong Ming, Stheno, and the others still wouldn't return to the Martyr's Palace. Without a doubt, this was Wu Ming's doing. Returning to the martyr's palace after the Holy Grail War ended? By the way, when did it end? Gadazi was indeed a newcomer. She really didn't understand at all. The Holy Grail War ended. The surviving martyr's palace, of course, will return to the martyr's palace. The Holy Grail War ended after Wu Ming defeated King Arthur and obtained the Holy Grail, Olga Marie said helplessly. Is that so? Gadazi smiled awkwardly. As expected of Zhuge Kongming. Wu Ming praised Zhuge Kongming. Then, Wu Ming raised the Holy Grail. The moment it lit up, Zhuge Kongming, Stheno, and the others' bodies began to glow. Then, summon me when you need me, the last master of Chaldea. Zhuge Kongming finished speaking and disappeared into blue magic particles. Goodbye, master of Chaldea. Stheno smiled. I hope you won't be so rude the next time we meet. Urieli also smiled, but this sentence was directed at Wu Ming. I apologize for my rudeness. Wu Ming was speechless. Sister Anna, are you leaving? Sakura Madu looked at Anna and said reluctantly. Yeah. Anna only hummed softly. She still didn't like talking to humans, even if it was her master. However, Anna was smiling. She was glad to have such a master. Then, goodbye, Sister Anna. Thank you for saving me. Sakura Madu smiled and waved at Anna. Then, Anna disappeared in silence. On the other hand, Astrilius disappeared without saying anything. Then, Tachika and Matthew quickly retrieved the Holy Grail and returned to Chaldea. Roman, are you ready for the ray shift? Olga Marie saw that all the servants had left and said to Roman. The preparations were done a few minutes ago, but... Roman showed a sad expression. Gadazi and Matthew were the same. But what Lev said was true. Now that I think about it, I did die in the explosion of Chaldea. Olga Marie said in a confused tone. Didn't I say that I wouldn't let Olga Marie die? Wu Ming suddenly said. Gadazi, Matthew, Roman, and even Olga Marie were shocked. You didn't say that. Chapter 380. Even if Olga Marie can return to Chaldea, that's what I said. Wu Ming smiled. This left everyone dumbfounded. I thought you were just making an analogy. Roman smiled shyly. Assassin, can you really save the director? Gadazi asked excitedly. Of course, Olga Marie is my master. The Grim Reaper doesn't have the guts to take my master's life from my hands, Wu Ming said domineeringly. That's great, director. You don't have to die. Matthew said happily. Why do I feel that this sentence is particularly strange? Olga Marie laughed. Although Wu Ming said that Olga Marie was his master, Olga Marie had already noticed when Wu Ming changed his class. Her contract with Wu Ming was broken. This was why Olga Marie was so nervous at the foot of Yuzong Mountain. Olga Marie thought that Wu Ming had left. Assassin had indeed left. Wu Ming was now Savor's savior. Olga Marie and Wu Ming both knew this, but they didn't reveal it. So, Assassin, how are you going to save the director? Roman asked. When Roman said this, not only were Gadazi and Matthew curious, even Olga Marie was quite curious. You may not know this, but I can make puppets. Wu Ming smiled and began to answer. Puppets? Everyone was confused. Are you talking about those wooden puppets? Gadazi raised her small hand and asked. No matter how you think about it, it's impossible. Matthew complained. It's like this, Wu Ming said. The golden ripple opened, and a figure was taken out by Wu Ming. Why was he taking it out? Because it was a puppet. Is this really a doll? Roman said in disbelief. The others were also stunned. A handsome man with golden hair and fair skin appeared in front of everyone. He was wearing an ancient white robe and had his eyes closed. That's right, this was the male version of Gilgamesh that Wu Ming had made in Uruk. Isn't this a real person? Are you sure you didn't kidnap her from that place? Olga Marie couldn't believe it. Everyone nodded. They couldn't tell that it was a puppet at all. I knew you guys would say that. Wu Ming smiled. Then, he raised his hand and reached into the blond man's robe. Rip! Following the sound of skin tearing, Wu Ming stretched out his hand and a complete piece of human skin, appeared in Wu Ming's hand. Olga, Marie, and the others were startled, retreating in fear. Then, Wu Ming lifted up the blond man's shirt. A complete piece of skin was missing from the abdomen of the doll, revealing the internal structure. Countless mechanical parts were placed in the blond man's abdomen, proving that this was a mechanical doll. This really is a mechanical doll. Although Roman was from the medical department, he was also a little involved in other aspects. Naturally, he could tell that this was a doll, not a human. Do you still need to look at the brain? Wu Ming smiled kindly. No, I don't think so. Ma Shu smiled awkwardly. Gadazi, Olga, and Marie also nodded. Of course, this is only a semi-finished product. I didn't replace the internal organs. I only made it to control its movements by projecting my mind into it. With that said, Wu Ming opened another golden ripple. This time, a person that looked exactly like the previous doll came out. As for this doll, it's my finished product. Be it its internal structure, sensory nerves, or magic circuits, they're all top-notch. The materials were all synthesized by me using rare magic plants and rare magic ores, the golden-haired doll said as it walked around before stopping. Putting a spirit into a body like this is no problem at all. His consciousness returned from the blonde doll to the servant's body. Wu Ming patted the motionless doll and praised it. If there is no other way, creating a body like this would be fine. Olga Marie said rather helplessly. After all, who would want to die for no reason if they could live? But I'm not going to create a body for Olga Marie. Wu Ming suddenly said. Do you want me to use this body? Olga Marie was scared. Of course not. Wu Ming shook his head and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After that, Olga Marie was relieved. Gadazi, Matthew, and Roman were also relieved. I'm going to use this, Wu Ming said as he took out a cup from the golden ripple. Its shape was very similar to the Holy Grail. Is this the reaction of the Holy Grail? Roman looked at the data on the display and said with some surprise. Of course, that wasn't the Holy Grail that Wu Ming took from Gilgamesh's treasure house. That Holy Grail had turned into magic power and integrated into Wu Ming's Saver spirit base. This is the Holy Grail I got in another parallel world, and this Holy Grail has been made a wish. After that, I slightly modified it. Wu Ming smiled. Have you heard of Heaven's Feel? Wu Ming asked. Could it be? Roman looked scared. The third method. Olga Marie continued Roman's words. The third method? Matthew was slightly surprised. What is the third method? Gadazi said that she didn't know anything. The materialization of the soul is not something that can be done by human beings. It's a higher level than magic. It's called magic, and the materialization of the soul is the third method. Olga Marie explained Heaven's Feel. Oh, it feels so strong. Gadazi's face was full of surprise. This Holy Grail was made a wish by a somewhat extreme saint. The wish was to materialize the souls of all human beings in the world. Wu Ming said. How is that possible? Even the Holy Grail can't materialize the souls of all human beings in the world. That's the product of the third method. Roman said with some surprise. If the Holy Grail was really that omnipotent, then Lev just needed to make a wish to exterminate human beings. If the Holy Grail was really that omnipotent, then the crisis in Winterwood City would affect the whole world. Of course, that saint has other ways to cheat. If we let it go, it may really materialize the souls of all human beings in that world. Wu Ming didn't elaborate, then looked at Olga Marie. Through my modification, this activated Holy Grail can no longer affect the surroundings. I decided to let Olga Marie take this Holy Grail and materialize the souls. Wu Ming's sentence completely surprised everyone. Hey. Chapter 381. Legend has it that the 5 great spells in the world could only be inherited by 5 people. As long as someone inherited one of the great spells, then the others would not be able to inherit that inherited spell. The previous successor of the first spell had died, and his descendants were said to be under the protection of the Magic Association. The second spell belonged to the Marshal of the Demonic Path, known as the Gemstone Man, Kixia Zelik Zayubian Ogu, who was also Wu Ming's old friend. The user of the third spell had died long ago. The House of Einstein Barons, one of the three families who developed the Holy Grail War ritual, were the descendants of the user of the third spell. The Holy Grail War could be said to be an incomplete third spell. The existence of the fourth spell was acknowledged by the users of the other spells, but what it was itself was still a mystery. The user of the fifth spell was the Aozaki family, and the current head of the family was Aozaki Aoko. It was said that the fifth spell was hidden in the magic seals passed down from generation to generation in the Aozaki family. Not to mention whether the 5 great spells were strong or not, they were definitely rare. Among the known users of the fifth spell, Zelik and Aozaki Aoko could be said to be very powerful figures. Although Aozaki Aoko had not Wu Ming before, Zelik Wu Ming had seen a lot of them. Using the second method, Enrich merged all the versions of himself from the parallel worlds and maintained his uniqueness. He also had the legendary battle record of defeating the Moon King. Although he was turned into a death apostle by the Moon King, he was still impressive. Although Aozaki Aoko was unknown, she was still active in the magic world with the fifth spell, which was enough to show her strength. This showed how powerful magic was, and the abilities related to magic were also incomparably powerful. Because Wu Ming said that he wanted Olga Mary to hold the Holy Grail that released the third spell, and let Olga Mary's soul, as a spirit, materialize. Naturally, everyone was quite surprised. Don't be so surprised. Although Olga Mary's soul will materialize, that is only the result of relying on the third spell, the Holy Grail. Once it leaves the Holy Grail, Olga Mary will become a spirit again. Wu Ming's words calmed everyone down. To put it simply, the Holy Grail was the spirit behind this human, who had no consciousness. It was entrusted to the Holy Grail and maintained its own life. But even so, there is no limit to the number of things that are related to magic. Roman had an envious expression on his face. Romani, what's with that expression? It's disgusting. Olga Marie used her poisonous tongue again. Roman is right. If Olga Marie has the ability, it's very likely that she'll be able to master the third magic spell. At that time, not only will Olga Marie be able to leave the Holy Grail and truly live on, she'll also be respected and feared in the magic world. The Animusphia family will also become a family of magic users. Wu Ming's last words made Olga Marie's eyes brighten. That's right, what's the point of working so hard? Isn't it just to inherit the family, not to embarrass my father, complete the protection of human rights, and promote the Animusphia family? Now that the opportunity was right in front of him, why should he hesitate? What do you think, Master? Do you accept my suggestion? Wu Ming smiled at Olga Marie. Although it was a question, Wu Ming could already see that Olga Marie was quite moved. I don't want to choose the materialization of the soul, it's just that I hate puppets. She spoke with incomparable pride. Yes, I understand. Then let's not delay any longer, let's start now. Then, Grazie and Matthew stepped back, leaving an empty space for Wu Ming and Olga Marie. Olga Marie stood nervously in place, looking at Wu Ming in front of her, and swallowed her saliva. Wu Ming raised the materialized Holy Grail in his left hand, and raised it in front of himself. Then, the Holy Grail flew up, and came to Olga Marie's front, and without a pause, it merged into Olga Marie's body. That's it. On the screen, Roman shouted in disbelief. Be quiet, Roman. Olga Marie angrily glared at Roman. But, this is the third method. How can the Holy Grail that merged with the third method be so casual? Please calm down, Doctor. Matthew awkwardly smiled, although he was also very curious. Actually, I also thought there would be some kind of light that broke through the sky. Grazie whispered. Not to mention that Grazie and the others were so surprised, Olga Marie naturally needless to say, but she didn't ask. But, unfortunately, it's that simple. Did you think there would be any supernatural phenomenon? Wu Ming shrugged, looking helpless. Olga Marie touched the place where the Holy Grail merged into her body and couldn't help but say, But I really don't feel anything. Did my soul really materialize? Olga Marie asked. It's not that simple. Wu Ming shook his head. walked in front of Olga Marie, and then put his hand on Olga Marie's chest. Ignoring the stunned Olga Marie, as well as the stunned Grazie, Matthew, and Roman, Wu Ming continued. Now you're just a soul that relies on the Holy Grail because the third method was limited by me, so you're now receiving the incomplete version of the third method, and the effect is only to maintain you and not dissipate when you return to Chaldea. Saying so, Wu Ming's hand on Olga Marie's chest suddenly lit up, and the Holy Grail in Olga Marie's body seemed to have sensed it, and through Olga Marie's body, it appeared at Olga Marie's heart. Like a real heart, the Holy Grail kept beating, and a burst of magic poured out of the Holy Grail like spring water, nourishing Olga Marie's somewhat weak soul. Let's leave it at that for now. As long as the Holy Grail exists, Olga Marie will be an immortal existence. Wu Ming calmly said something that many people longed for. I say, you should have touched enough. Olga Marie lowered her head, and her bangs covered her face, so that Wu Ming couldn't see her clearly. However, from her tone, there was a trace of murderous intent. It's about time. Saying so, Wu Ming moved his hand that was pressed against Olga Marie's chest. By the way, Olga Marie, you're quite something. Wu Ming looked at Olga Marie with a smile. Slap. Wu Ming let go of the hand on Olga Marie's chest, and grabbed Olga Marie's hand that was slapping his cheek. Looking at Olga Marie's shy and angry face, Wu Ming calmly smiled. Well, just kidding, just kidding. Wu Ming let go of the hand, and quickly pushed it away, leaving Olga Marie standing there with her arms crossed in shame. You remember? Olga Marie gnashed her teeth, and said with shame and anger. In that case, I'll help you summon a servant for free. Chapter 382. Wu Ming's words surprised everyone. Summon a servant? Everyone was surprised. After all, I can't follow you back to Chaldea. I still have my mission. But it's not just Winterwood City that's burning. Wu Ming's words made everyone silent. Yes, there were 7 other singularities. If I'm not by your side, let Olga Marie's personal servant number 2 protect you. Olga Marie's personal servant. Number 2? For this strange title, Grazie and Matthew couldn't help but repeat it. I don't need a second servant. My only servant is you. Olga Marie directly rejected Wu Ming's proposal. The atmosphere at the scene became somewhat depressing. You know you're the director of Chaldea. Matthew is Tachika's master. He can't protect you all the time, and I have other missions. I can't stay by your side. Wu Ming persuaded Olga Marie. Leader, I think Assassin is right. If you return, as the backbone of the organization, you will need a bodyguard, Roman tried to persuade him. Roman didn't dare to tell the other Chaldea employees that Olga Marie had died. Chaldea employees were also very relieved because the director was personally carrying out the mission in the singularity. Chaldea employees knew that there were still 7 singularities, and that all the humans outside had been burned. Almost everyone had a trace of abnormality. Fortunately, the director is still here. That's right. The director can solve any problem perfectly. With the director around, there will be no problem. Although it was basically Lev who helped. Well, let's work hard and clear the 7 singularities together. This was the conversation of less than 20 employees. It had to be said that Olga Marie was indeed quite dignified in Chaldea. She could be regarded as the spiritual support of the remaining employees. Olga Marie looked at Roman, and then looked at Grazie and Matthew, who nodded at her. She made a decision. All right, I'll take your advice. For once, Olga Marie wasn't so proud. Wu Ming smiled. Then, let's get ready. Although Yuanzhang Mountain had exploded, the spirit veins beneath it weren't affected much. Wu Ming and the others arrived at the ruins of the Yuanzhang Mountain, which was a basin filled with piles of broken rocks. Due to the clash between Wu Ming and Artoria's noble phantasms, there was a huge hole in the middle of the Yuanzhang Mountain. From the side, it looked like the Yuanzhang Mountain had disappeared. Looking from above, it looked like a basin surrounded by mountains. But because of Shutendaji's noble artifact, this large hole had turned into a poisonous hole. But the sound of flowing water was heard. Countless streams of water flowed into the basin from unknown places. However, The strange thing was that the poison did not corrode the water flow. Instead, it slowly retreated as if it was afraid. If one took a closer look, the water was dark red in color. Soon, the water enveloped the entire basin. Vanish. As Wu Ming's voice came, countless streams of water seemed to have reached the boiling point and began to boil. Countless purple smoke evaporated from the boiling red water flow, and the moment it touched the air, it turned into pure magical power and dissipated. Walala! The sound of flowing water was heard again, but this time, there was no water flowing in, it was the boiling water that existed in the cave that flowed out. The scene changed, countless streams of water flowed back to Wu Ming's palm, and Wu Ming's palm was like a bottomless pit endlessly absorbing the water flow. Until the last trace of water disappeared. It's done, I've purified Shutendaji's poison. Wu Ming turned around and said to everyone behind him. Wu Ming just activated his flood and annihilation avatars, and the water of destruction completely eliminated Shutendaji's poison. By the way, assassin, you're no longer assassin, right? Looking at Wu Ming's series of actions, Gadazi said thoughtfully. Roman and Matthew also nodded. After all, the supernatural ability just now was definitely not something an assassin could do. I can't detect assassin's current class either. Roman was a little puzzled. For some reason, the instrument couldn't detect Wu Ming's current class. My current class is Saver, Savior. Wu Ming answered everyone's doubts. Saver? Savior? I've never heard of that before. Roman shook his head. Maybe it's because my current class is a class that no one has ever held before, at least for now. Wu Ming explained. Wu Ming really didn't know who had held the Savior class, so he said for now. Although I don't know anything, it's still amazing. Gadazi touched the back of her head awkwardly. I used this class to deal with my enemies, and there are very few servants who can hold the Savior class. Chaldea's system probably didn't record this class information. Then, Wu Ming acted. Let's not talk about this for now, let's summon the servants. Everyone didn't think about it anymore and followed Wu Ming into the big hole. As soon as they entered the big hole, they found that nothing happened here. The ground was clean, as if the previous battle was just a dream. I used my water to clean this place. Wu Ming explained. Then, Wu Ming felt the magic power of the earth, seemingly casually walked to a place and squatted down. Just when everyone was wondering what Wu Ming was doing, suddenly, a magic circle appeared under Wu Ming's feet. This is a magic circle used to summon servants, you should know how to use it. Wu Ming walked out of the magic circle and looked at Olga Marie. In short, Wu Ming asked Olga Marie if she could chant the spell. Of course, I have no problem, I saw the summoning spell in Chaldea. Olga Marie said and walked to the front of the magic circle. Declare. Thy body is under me, my fate is in thy sword. Then, Olga Marie raised her right hand without the command seal. At the same time, the magic circle began to emit a violent magic power. Leader, you don't want to directly summon a servant, do you? Roman was a little dumbfounded. Without a lot of preparation for the summoning ritual, especially without a holy relic, the success rate is very low. Even Chaldea only summoned 3 servants, and Galahad was one of them. Rest assured, this is a summoning circle that I have strengthened. Even if it drags, a servant will be pulled out from the Hall of Valhalla. Wu Ming said with confidence. Moreover, without a holy relic, it depends on the compatibility between the servant and the master. I believe that such a servant will be able to bear the burden of becoming Olga Marie's servant. Looking at Wu Ming, who seemed to be very reasonable, Gadazi and Matthew nodded thoughtfully. Even Roman was in a state of thinking. The compatibility between the master and the servant. At this time, Olga Marie's summoning spell came to an end. Entangle the 3 spirits of words for 7 days. Come from the wheel of inhibition, guardian of the Libra. Bang. As if something fell to the ground, the magic reached the maximum value and suddenly exploded, causing a lot of smoke. Vaguely, everyone saw a petite figure in the smoke. So, you're my master. Chapter 383. You are my master. With a tender voice, the smoke gradually dissipated, and a young figure was revealed. She wore a small hat on top of her short blue-purple hair, scarlet eyes, canine teeth, a pair of petite bat wings, and a gorgeous aristocratic costume. Compared to a servant, more people would think that she was a young lady who needed to be pampered. I say, are you sure she is here to protect me, and not me to take care of her? Olga Marie looked at Wu Ming helplessly and pointed to the summoned servant floating in the air. She looked like a particularly troublesome fellow. That was what Olga Marie thought. Well, you summoned a servant without using a holy relic. It must be a servant with good compatibility with you. Wu Ming did not directly answer Olga Marie's question, but teased her. I don't think I have a good compatibility with her. Olga Marie looked at the young lady and shook her head. Get along for a while and see. Maybe you two can get along well. Wu Ming continued to smile. What are you doing? I am Pamilia Teeps, the last descendant of the Teeps family. How dare you ignore me? The young lady who called herself Pamilia roared in anger. Oops. So that's how it is, a vampire, but it is dangerous to let a monster stay with a human. Wu Ming thought without leaving a trace. What Teeps family? I have never heard of it. I am the head of the Animusphia family, one of the 12 monarchs of the clock tower, Olga Marie Yasmert Animusphia. Show me some respect. Olga Marie crossed her arms and stared at Pamilia angrily. What a joke. You are just a human. It is already a great mercy to let you be my master. Obediently offer your blood. The last descendant of the Teeps family needs to replenish her energy. Pamilia's petite wings flapped and flew to the front of Olga Marie, maintaining the same height. Pamilia looked at Olga Marie proudly. Although I don't know why thou, who has no master qualification, can summon a servant and form a contract with me, it doesn't matter. From now on, thou is the servant of I, Pamilia Teeps. Serve me well. Being able to summon a servant without master qualification, of course, this was the effect of the magic circle set by Wu Ming. After Pamilia finished speaking, Olga Marie's forehead showed a well. Olga Marie's pain of not having master qualification. Then Olga Marie seemed to think of something, and put one hand on her other hand. So that's how it is. Because she died a long time ago, she's the last of the line. How pitiful. Olga Marie looked at Pamilia provocatively. What? You bastard. Are you provoking me? It had to be said that Olga Marie was right. The reason why it was the last descendant was because Pamilia had already died. Olga Marie and Pamilia stared at each other, as if they were mortal enemies. The two of them are really good together. Roman looked at them arguing like they were best friends and smiled unexpectedly. You shut up. Olga Marie and Pamilia stared at Roman and said in unison, scaring Roman off his seat. The two of them are really good together. Gadotsi and Matthew looked at each other and had to admit this. Wu Ming looked at this scene, and the worry in his heart disappeared. She was provoked to this extent, but she still didn't kill the human. Although Olga Marie was her master, it was also possible to see the character of this vampire named Pamilia. Although she is a monster, she won't casually kill people. She has her own principles, really like a noble. Wu Ming nodded. Miss Pamilia, right? Do you understand the current situation? Wu Ming suddenly asked Pamilia. Hearing Wu Ming's voice, Pamilia no longer stared at Olga Marie, but looked at Wu Ming with some fear. She could feel danger from Wu Ming. Of course I know. It's fine if your human rights are burned. You're not vampires anyway. If I didn't take a nap. After all, I was merciful enough to accept your summons. Gadotsi and Matthew looked at Pamilia helplessly. You just said you took a nap. Shut up. Pamilia interrupted and showed her small canine teeth as a threat. You're so cute, Matthew. Yeah, I think so too, senpai. Matthew and Gadotsi hid on the side and whispered. As a servant, Pamilia naturally heard it, and then Pamilia's face was full of shame. Since you have accepted Olga Marie's call, then can you protect Olga Marie? Wu Ming looked at Pamilia with a serious expression. Seeing such a formal conversation, Pamilia no longer cared about Matthew and Gadotsi's ridicule, but looked at Wu Ming. Since I've been summoned by my master, I won't let my master and servant be in danger. I swear in the name of Teeps." After saying that, Pamilia turned her head away and floated on the spot with her arms crossed in front of her chest. "Then, I'll leave Olga Marie to you, Pamilia Teeps." Wu-Ming looked at Pamilia with relief. "Leave it to me." Pamilia waved her hand casually. "Wait a minute. What's with the atmosphere of entrusting your daughter to me? You're making it sound like I can't live without you guys. Have some self-awareness." Olga Marie yelled frantically. "In that case, I will start the race shift. Everyone get ready," Roman said, and everyone, including Grazie and Matthew, nodded. "Roman, you bastard." Olga Marie glared angrily at Roman, who ruined the atmosphere. "Well then, everyone, have a safe journey. I will go to the other singularities to explore. You must hurry." Wu-Ming waved his hand at the group of people who were beginning to spiritualize. "Assassin, see you later." Grazie waved at Wu-Ming. "Assassin Senpai, please take care." Matthew also bowed slightly. Fu, a little beast appeared out of nowhere and jumped on Matthew's shoulder. "Ah, it's Fufu." As expected, Fufu is very smart. Matthew hugged the little beast named Fufu and said happily. Wu-Ming took a few more glances at the little guy named Fufu. But after seeing Matthew's happy smile, Wu-Ming didn't say anything. "I will remember you, powerful and mysterious existence," Pamilia said. "Wait a minute." Following Olga Marie's sad cry, Grazie and the others disappeared. "You have to take responsibility for the trouble you caused, Dr. Roman," Wu-Ming said to Roman, who was still on the screen. "As expected, you saw through it." Roman smiled bitterly. "Well, as compensation, I will accept this holy grail of the singularity," Wu-Ming said as he raised the cup of light in his right hand. "But, oh no, I forgot to retrieve the holy grail." Wu-Ming pointed with one hand and the screen disappeared. Then, Wu-Ming held the holy grail and merged it into his body. "So, where is the next singularity?" Wu-Ming said as he turned into spirit particles and disappeared along with the holy grail in his body. Gradually, Winterwood City began to repair itself. Chapter 384. Wu-Ming dispelled his servant form and returned to the root. He opened his gem-like red dragon eyes and looked around. Wu-Ming could see that there were traces of the root black soil around him, and the root black soil was naturally destroyed by Wu-Ming's ability and the defense mechanism he set up. After checking other places in the root, Wu-Ming was relieved. At least the root black soil did not launch a general attack. Then, Wu-Ming took out the Holy Grail luminous object that he brought back from the singularity. Wu-Ming didn't bring this Holy Grail back for no reason. Wu-Ming's purpose was to use this Holy Grail to explore the location of other singularities. After all, this Holy Grail was arranged by the culprit behind the burning of humanity. Since there were other singularities, there must be a Holy Grail among them. Wu-Ming didn't think that these Holy Grails were irrelevant. Wu-Ming looked at the black dragon-shaped mark on his dragon claw. Through the mark related to the Holy Grail and the black soil, plus the power of the root, it was not difficult to find the 7 singularities. With these thoughts in mind, Wu-Ming began to explore the singularities. Wu-Ming grabbed the Holy Grail luminous object with his dragon claw, closed his eyes, and began to search for the specific location of other singularities. After a long time, Wu-Ming opened his wine-red eyes. So that's how it is. They want to destroy the important nodes in human history to achieve the purpose of destroying the entire human race. Wu-Ming had already explored the specific location of the other 7 singularities. After knowing the significance of these eras, Wu-Ming understood the purpose of the culprit behind the scenes. If Europe did not undergo ideological enlightenment, what would Europe be like in the future? If the fleets that opened up new routes to the world did not complete the opening of new routes and circumnavigation of the world, what would be the impact on the world in the future? If humans were extinct in the pre-Christian era, would there still be humans in the future? This time, the enemy possessed by the Black Mud had such an idea. They chose 7 particularly important eras for mankind and sent them the Holy Grail, disrupting those eras in order to destroy mankind. But then again, Uruk was also chosen by that guy. Among the singularities Wuming observed, Gilgamesh ruled Mesopotamia's 5th Uruk dynasty. After all, that was an era where God and man were separated. As a turning point for mankind, it was indeed an important one. Speaking of which, I do miss it. Let's take this opportunity to go back and take a look. Then, Wuming's huge dragon head looked at its own dragon arm. That's what you think too, Xiao-en. After Wuming finished speaking, a complicated golden chain appeared on Wuming's dragon arm. Yes, Lord Wuming, I miss Uruk too. Although Wuming could travel through the various eras of the world at will, Wuming did not choose to do so often. Even if Wuming had perfect resistance to time and space and the world would not affect him, it would still leave an impression on the world itself. A calm lake could withstand the fall of a stone, but if it was hit by too many storms, the lake would not be able to remain calm and would take a long time to recover. The same was true for the world. If Wuming left traces in various eras, it would have an impact on later generations. If the impact was too much, the world would collapse. Take for example, if Wuming established faith in an era, then after Wuming left, this faith would gradually be hidden by the world. And if Wuming continued to leave faith in every previous era, then thousands of years later, the world might be filled with humans who believed in Wuming. If it was serious, it was very likely that humans would become extinct. Because of Wuming's time and space characteristics, if he interfered with the world too much, the world would not be able to repair itself. The mastermind behind the burning of humanity also used this method to successfully make all humans extinct in 2018. But in the case of singularities, Wuming's complete version did not have to worry about affecting later generations because after the singularities were repaired and eliminated, all the effects caused by the singularities would be repaired by the world. For example, if someone in the singularities was killed by a servant, then the world was likely to repair that person to be killed by a gangster. Therefore, Wuming chose to go to the singularities with ease. Then, let's get started. With that said, a time and space wormhole appeared in front of Wuming. The Holy Grail was lifted by an invisible force and sent into the time and space wormhole. Then, the time and space wormhole closed. Wu Ming, on the other hand, nodded in satisfaction. Then, he slowly lay down and fell into a deep sleep. The celestial lock wrapped around Wuming's dragon arm also fell silent. 2600 BC, Mesopotamia, Uruk City, Hyunryong's sacrificial altar. A group of priests dressed in simple and unadorned attire stood in front of a magic array. Sama, have you really decided? The priest, who seemed to be the representative of the other priests, looked at the woman in front of him. She wore a green priest's robe, a white cloak with a hood, and a thin veil covering her face. Only her eyes were exposed, revealing a determined gaze. Yes, I have decided, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will bring back the departed Hyunryong Sama. Yes, this group of priests gathered at the sacrificial altar to summon the gods, which was difficult even for Kanzaki. The departure of the gods is inevitable, and it is natural for Hyunryong Sama to leave. It is basically impossible to summon the departed gods back. The representative priest was still trying to persuade her. Yes, Sidri, Sama, even if you persuade King Gilgamesh to acquiesce to your request, it is impossible to summon Hyunryong Sama back. At this time, the other priests were also trying to persuade her. After all, that lord has the highest level of divinity. Even summoning the clone of the god Ishtar exhausted the life force of the priestess. Siduri, Sama, you have to think twice. Listening to the constant persuasion from the people around her, Siduri smiled. I know that everyone is thinking for me, but there are more and more demonic beasts. If Hyunryong Sama returns to the surface, then more people in Mesopotamia will be saved. I have made up my mind, there is no need to persuade me anymore. Looking at Siduri like this, everyone fell silent. Then, please allow us to assist Siduri, Sama. The representative priest spoke. That's right, please allow us to assist Siduri, Sama. We also want to contribute to summoning Hyunryong, Sama. Please allow us to do so, Siduri, Sama. The others also followed suit. Siduri, who originally wanted to refuse, nodded happily when she saw the same light in everyone's eyes. Then, let us begin. Siduri placed a stone in the center of the magic circle. This was a corner of the Hyunryong shrine. Because the gods were beginning to fade, the divinity in the shrine was almost exhausted, and it was beginning to be eroded by nature. Hyunryong, Sama, please respond to our summons. Siduri put her hands together and began to inject magic into the magic circle. Everyone knelt in front of the magic circle, and Siduri was at the front. After an unknown amount of time, gradually, one priest after another fell to the ground unconscious after exhausting their magic power. Only a few elderly priests merely fell to the ground and did not faint. These people looked at Siduri, who had exhausted her magic power and replaced it with life force, and fell into deep silence. May Hyunryong, Sama bless you, Siduri, Sama. They prayed. At this moment, a voice spoke. Let's not talk about the others first. I don't remember teaching you to waste your life like this, Siduri. Chapter 385. What's this voice? The few priests who were still conscious were puzzled. To maintain a sense of mystery, Wuming's voice was thickened. Only the other gods, Gilgamesh, Enkidu, and Siduri, who was the chief priest, heard Wuming's real voice. Lord Hyunryong. Siduri shouted in an old voice. At this time, the few priests who were still conscious realized that Siduri had become very old. Buzz. An indiscernible sound was heard. The magic circle glowed, and countless streams of pure life energy surged out of the magic circle. They were infused into Sigili and the priests who were lying on the ground. Siduri's life force was replenished. Her wrinkled skin recovered and became smoother than before. Her dry and lifeless hair was like new hair, full of vitality. This is... The priests who were unconscious also woke up. The priests felt the endless life force in their bodies, and felt this incomparably familiar power. The few priests who were not unconscious already knew who the owner of the voice was. It was the Hyunryong that Siduri mentioned, the god that they were desperately hoping for. A light appeared in the center of the magic circle, and a white figure appeared. He wore a pure white robe and had a handsome face. A golden chain was wrapped around the white figure like an ornament. There were also 4 dragon horns on his head. If one looked closely, one could see that one of the dragon horns was definitely an ornament. It's been a long time, Siduri. Wuming smiled at Siduri, who was kneeling in front of him. His smile was extremely dazzling. Lord Hyunryong, congratulations on your return. Siduri knelt down and congratulated Wuming. The other priests did the same and knelt down to Wuming. Congratulations on your return, Lord Hyunryong. After all, it was the first time that Lord Hyunryong appeared in human form, so the priests were especially respectful. The invisible dragon god was revered, and the dragon god in human form was even more revered. Being too mysterious would cause a distance. This was also why Siduri insisted on summoning Wuming. After Siduri became the chief priest, Wuming revealed his true form. Although I have already replenished the life force that you lack, it's better to rest a little. Wuming ordered the priests under him. After all, strictly speaking, these priests were all under his command and were his subordinates. Yes, we will follow your instructions, Lord Xianlong, everyone said in unison. Then the priests left, and only Siduri was left. What's wrong, Siduri? Aren't you going to rest? Wuming asked. Lord Hyunryong, Mesopotamia is in danger now, and we need your help. Siduri maintained her kneeling position and waited for Wuming's answer. I know, but your health is the most important thing. You go rest first. I will personally look for King Gilgamesh to understand the situation. Wuming said gently. Looking at Siduri, who was about to refute, Wuming's expression suddenly became serious. This is an order. After all, Siduri was extremely stubborn. She would not listen to anything unless it was an order. Understood. I will go back and rest, Lord Hyunryong. Then, Siduri left Hyunryong's temple without hesitation. Where's Gilgamesh? I don't think it's the female Gilgamesh I know. With that, Wu Ming went to the divine tower in the center of Uruk. Wu Ming walked on the road and looked at the modern business atmosphere with interest. As expected, no matter which guild it is, they can all become the wise king. It's Lord Hyunryong. Lord Hyunryong is back. Lord Hyunryong. In an instant, countless people knelt in front of Wu Ming. Wu Ming had just started to look at everything on the street when he was recognized. As a result, the scene of countless people kneeling and worshipping Wu Ming appeared. There's no need for such formalities. Just put your right hand on your chest and bow slightly in the future. After saying that, Wu Ming immediately took advantage of the moment when everyone had yet to react and instantly ran away. Wu Ming arrived at the divine tower and began to walk towards the top of the divine tower. Lord Hyunryong. The soldiers at the bottom of the divine tower shouted at Wu Ming. Because they were on duty, the soldiers did not kneel. Wu Ming replied faintly, then walked up the divine tower. That shouldn't be. Even the priests wouldn't release my portrait immediately. How did the people recognize me? Wu Ming walked on the divine tower, puzzled by the situation. Are you an idiot? Your return made Hyunryong's temple shine brighter. The divinity that belonged to you has returned to you. You're as dazzling as a flame in the night. How can the people not recognize you? Suddenly, a voice full of disdain came. This tone, although it's not a female voice, it's quite nostalgic. Wu Ming smiled. He knew who was talking. Wu Ming was not in a hurry. He walked slowly on the steps of the divine tower. When he came to the room at the top of the divine tower, because there was no door, Wu Ming directly saw the scene inside. The blonde man was wearing a rather simple but kingly clothes. He was sitting in front of a wooden table dealing with government affairs on a clay tablet. Seeing Wu Ming coming here, the blonde man put down the clay tablet in his hand and looked at Wu Ming with a proud smile. It's been a long time, Hyunryong. Although the tone was quite disdainful, the hidden happiness in it could not be concealed. You too, Gil. Like two old friends, Wu Ming and Gilgamesh greeted each other. What's wrong? Because you came here as a servant, your brain is a little stupid? If you show your divinity like this, that annoying woman will come. It was still a vicious speech, but Wu Ming was quite nostalgic. In any case, every Gilgamesh was Wu Ming's disciple. Yes, I'm sorry, Wu Ming said. He controlled the divinity that he had been emitting. The reason why he didn't control it before was because Wu Ming had never had divinity. Therefore, because of the rank, divinity was attached to Wu Ming's body. Oh, I didn't expect Siduri to summon you. It seems that the summoning ritual of the servant has to be rushed. Gilgamesh's red eyes casually glanced at Wu Ming, and then Gilgamesh began to throw himself into the clay tablet's government affairs. I heard Siduri say that there is a large number of demonic beasts invading. Explain it to me specifically. Wu Ming walked to Gilgamesh's side, and with one hand, a rather gorgeous and quaint chair was made by Wu Ming out of thin air, and then Wu Ming sat down in front of Gilgamesh. This chair was the style that Queen Sparkle liked in Winterwood City, and now it was directly made by Wu Ming using magic. At this moment, a tsundere female voice sounded. Hyunryong. Come out. Why can't I find my father? Is it because of you? Chapter 386. Boom! Suddenly, a golden light broke through the roof of the tower, creating a large hole. The person who came was revealed. She had 2 black ponytails, red eyes, and an elegant headdress. She wore revealing clothes and was driving a boat that was the size of 2 people. See, I told you, you would definitely attract this troublesome woman. Gilgamesh looked at the person with disdain. This shameless dress, this bow, and this rude tone. Are you Ishtar? Wu Ming suddenly realized and looked at Ishtar. Hey, what do you mean shameless dress and rude tone? I am Ishtar, the mistress of the heavens. Wait a minute, I almost got fooled by you. First, tell my father if you are the one who made them disappear. Ishtar refuted Wu Ming's words, but she quickly realized that she was here to question Hyunryong. Then you are wrong, Ishtar. I was just summoned here in my servant form. Wu Ming shook his head and denied Ishtar's words. At this time, Gilgamesh also said impatiently, I've already told you that the disappearance of your god is inevitable. Not only me, but even Xianlong didn't do anything. Yet, you relied on your willfulness to barge into this king's palace. You no longer have the protection of your father. Don't even think of leaving without leaving half of your family's property. Although he spoke righteously at the beginning, he began to feel that something was amiss towards the end. Don't even think about it. Don't even think about getting a penny from me. Ishtar stepped back in panic and looked at Gilgamesh and Wu Ming vigilantly. I'm not interested in money or treasures. Don't look at me. Wu Ming raised his hand helplessly. That's right, you are always like this. You are not interested in money or treasures. You only care about protecting humans. Ishtar looked at Wu Ming with disdain. It was as if she was looking at a money bank with no money. Since it has nothing to do with you, then goodbye. I don't want to stay here for a second longer. Ishtar said as she flew out of the roof with her horse Anna. That's why I hate that woman. She's so old, yet she doesn't even know how to walk through the door. Gilgamesh said rather irritably. Well, that's Ishtar's personality. Wu Ming said as he drew a few lune runes in the air and filled the hole in the roof. In just a few seconds, the hole in the roof created by Ishtar was repaired. Oh, you can still use lune runes? You are now descending as a rider. Gilgamesh looked at this scene with interest. Of course I can. After all, even if I am a rider, I am still a Uruk Hyunryong. As your teacher, how can I not know how to use my magic? Wu Ming explained. That's right, Wu Ming descended as a rider this time. But Wu Ming didn't want to descend as a rider. He wanted to descend as a saver. The reason why Wu Ming descended as a rider was because of Siduri. Wu Ming sent the Holy Grail to this era and was about to descend as a saver, but he heard Siduri's call. She's too reckless. This was Wu Ming's evaluation of Siduri at that time. That's right, Siduri wanted to summon Wu Ming as a god. In short, she wanted to summon Wu Ming's original body. And she also knew that even when the priestess summoned Ishtar, she instantly exhausted her life and only summoned a clone. If Wu Ming didn't happen to be in Uruk, Siduri would have become a mummy by now. After that, Wu Ming directly linked the Holy Grail to the summoning circle. Through Siduri's summon, Wu Ming appeared as a rider and saved Siduri's life. After all, he was someone he knew. If he wasted his life in vain and failed to summon Hyunryong, it would be a little cruel. But you're really funny when you descend as a rider. What do these two pairs of dragon horns mean? Are they funny decorations? If that's really the case, you've undoubtedly succeeded. This king is very happy. Gilgamesh smiled as he looked at the 4 horns on Wu Ming's head. Wu Ming helplessly touched his horns. Kalas was considered a decoration, but there was a pair of horns on Wu Ming's head. After all, Hyunryong appeared as a rider, so it was normal for him to have horns. Wu Ming shrugged. By the way, Ishtar descended as a rider, right? Ishtar's current appearance was obviously not the original appearance of Ishtar. Wu Ming had seen similar examples not long ago, such as Zhuge Kong Ming and Sima. During the Battle of the 14 Riders, Ishtar also descended as a rider. That's right. The stupid priestess summoned the Uruk city god, Ishtar, without this king's permission. As a result, not only did the priestess die suddenly, but the woman also came to the Uruk in an incomplete rider. This king is very happy to see that woman in such a sorry state. When Gilgamesh thought of Ishtar coming to Uruk and not being able to find her father, even the gods who doted on her, she was so anxious that she was on the verge of tears. Gilgamesh was quite happy. You really have a bad taste, Wu Ming complained, although he was also very happy. So, what is the crisis in the Uruk? Tell me about it in detail. Wu Ming became serious. Now I kind of miss those idle gods. At least they don't want to destroy the human race because they have nothing better to do, Gilgamesh said sarcastically. Then, Gilgamesh explained to Wu Ming what happened. Enkidu died, and Hyunryong also disappeared because of Kanzaki's retreat. Gilgamesh, who had lost a good teacher and a good friend, was physically and mentally exhausted. So, he abandoned the Uruk and went to search for the elixir of immortality. After some twists and turns, the elixir of immortality that he found was stolen by a snake. At this time, Gilgamesh also came to a sudden realization. This king, who has seen the past and the future, doesn't need to continue living. King Gilgamesh returned to the Uruk, which was about to be abandoned, and as a virtuous king, he regoverned the Uruk and made the Uruk even more prosperous than before. At this time, all kinds of magical beasts that seemed to be Tiamat's children came out of nowhere and attacked the Mesopotamia. Gilgamesh stayed in the Holy Tower and organized the army to protect the Mesopotamia. And now that Wu Ming was summoned, it was a few days after the demonic beasts began their attack. Chapter 387. The enemy is Tiamat, and these beasts are undoubtedly the products of Tiamat, Gilgamesh explained. And I have received information that including Tiamat, a total of 3 goddesses have formed an alliance with the purpose of attacking the Uruk, but the other 2 goddesses are temporarily unknown. That is to say, it is likely that they are not gods of the Sumer pantheon, Wu Ming asked. It is not impossible, but except for Tiamat, the other 2 goddesses have not done anything, Gilgamesh said while arranging the clay on his desk. I have begun to form a front against the beasts, and now I have begun to build a defensive barrier behind Nippur city. With that, Gilgamesh handed a clay board to Wu Ming. Wu Ming took the clay board, and there was a map engraved on it. The map clearly indicated that there was a barrier blocking the rear of Nippur. The 2 sides of the barrier extended to the nearby mountains. It was impossible for magic beasts to attack from the mountains where movement was difficult, but Gilgamesh had also sent people to guard it. And the clay board indicated that the beasts were now approaching Babylon city. As long as the place is occupied by the magic beasts, it will be completely turned into a wasteland. This is what happened to these places before. The people who didn't have time to evacuate all disappeared. Gilgamesh pointed to the north of Babylon city. Those were places that had been crossed, and those cities had become abandoned cities, which meant that they had been captured by the beasts. So, in the current situation, Gil, what do you think? Wu Ming looked at Gilgamesh. Not to mention Gilgamesh's combat power in the state of the Sage King, Gilgamesh was a powerful figure with the pariah sword. Now Gilgamesh was in the human state, not the servant state. Some people may think that Gilgamesh in the human state was weak, but don't forget, how could Gilgamesh, who dared to go against the gods in Kanagami, be weak? The current Gilgamesh was at least stronger than Gilgamesh in the servant state. This king's opinion is a defensive battle, Gilgamesh said. This king told the Uruk people a few days ago that the 5th Uruk dynasty will be destroyed, and humans will be destroyed in half a year, Gilgamesh said while looking out the window. This king is no longer afraid of death, and the people are very active in living. Didn't you see it? Gilgamesh was right. On the way here, Wu Ming saw a prosperous scene. Prosperous. There was no despair on the people's faces, only hope for tomorrow. The 5th Uruk dynasty is destined to be weak, but the humans of the 6th dynasty will be active, so I will not take the initiative to attack. In addition, Gilgamesh had another reason. If he used all his strength to eliminate Tiamat and the other 2 pillar goddesses, the mastermind behind the burning of humanity would arrange new enemies and even new plans. Cracking the singularity too early would alert the enemy. After all, Chaldea and the others were now working on the first singularity. According to the difficulty of the singularity, the Uruk was likely to be the last singularity. If this singularity was rescued by Wu Ming and the others, after Chaldea cleared the 6th singularity, it was likely that new singularities or even more would appear. Wu Ming and Gilgamesh both understood this, so Gilgamesh chose a defensive battle, and Wu Ming gave up the savior title and accepted Siduri's summon. But even if he accepted Siduri's summon, Wu Ming's master was not Siduri, but the holy grail that remained in Wu Ming's body. After all, the 5th Uruk dynasty will eventually come to an end. This is an irresistible history. Gilgamesh said indifferently. That's also true. After all, we haven't figured out the true identity of the other 2 pillar goddesses. It's not wise to act rashly. Wu Ming also nodded. But we can't let the Uruk fall too early. Then, Wu Ming stood up. Gil, you should know about the Holy Grail War, right? Wu Ming asked Gil. Of course, this king knows about it. I accidentally saw it with my clairvoyance. This king originally intended to summon 7 servants to help fight against the demonic beasts. Gilgamesh waved his hand and smiled a little uninterestedly. After all, it's better than nothing. There's no time to lose. Follow this king's summon in this tower. Gilgamesh didn't leave the room and directly engraved the summoning circle in the room. Don't you need my help? Even for you, summoning multiple servants as a human is not a small burden. Wu Ming asked. Wu Ming was now using the Holy Grail in his body as a medium. If possible, Gilgamesh could also let Wu Ming summon servants. No, this king can do it. Don't underestimate this king, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh smiled and refused Wu Ming's proposal. Wu Ming smiled helplessly. Then, holding the divine axe and the clay book, Gilgamesh stood in front of the circle and began to chant. Heroes of all ages, respond to this king's summon and seek refuge under this king. Buzz dash, the magic circle lit up. Because it was an unusual summoning ritual of the Holy Grail War, Gilgamesh didn't use a special spell. He just injected magic into the magic circle. In an instant, 7 figures appeared from the magic circle. Saber, Okita Soki, I will serve you sincerely as a samurai, Pwa. A young woman who looked like a samurai held a sheathed Japanese katana and respectfully knelt in front of Gilgamesh, and then she spat out blood. Lancer, Sparta King Leonidas, my king, use me as you wish. Oh. A muscular man with a red cloak and a golden helmet whose face could not be seen clearly and a spear in his hand began to roar angrily. Archer, Baguzan at the king's service. A woman wearing a cloth armor, a long sword, a long bow, and a long sword also knelt on the ground behind Minamoto Yashitsu. Caster Merlin in response to the king's summon, I come here, oh, isn't this a villa? A white-clothed old man smiled at Wu Ming. Assassin, Fuma Kotaro, please take care of me. A young man wearing a ninja outfit and a wide scarf knelt beside Baguzan. Berserker, Ibaraki Dojo, is there anything delicious here? He. The ghost named Ibaraki Dojo made a strange laugh and looked at everyone with a smile. Ruler Amakusa Shiro Shurgen, I have arrived here in response to the summons. So that's how it is. What an ill-fated relationship. Amakusa Shiro Shurgen saw Wu Ming and instantly recognized him. Rider, Uruk Hyunryong, welcome to Mesopotamia in 2600 BC. Wu Ming also reported his rank. Welcome to your arrival, now you are lucky to be under this king's command and witness the end of the Uruk. Gilgamesh looked at everyone with a smile. At this point, a total of 8 riders of 7 ranks, including additional ranks, descended to Uruk. Chapter 388. 8 servants descended on Uruk. Among them, Okita Soki, Leonidas, Baguzan, Fuma Kotaro, Ibaraki Dojo, and Shiro Amakusa. A total of 6 servants were sent to the front line by Gilgamesh. Leonidas and Baguzan were both generals, so they were sent to the front line to lead the troops. Okita Soki, although she was like an assassin, she could also destroy the enemy's elite units, so she was also sent to the front line. As a berserker, Ibaraki Dojo naturally went to the battlefield to kill the enemy. Fuma Kotaro was responsible for collecting information and passing it back and forth between the front line and the rear. And Shiro Amakusa was responsible for the command work. After all, Shiro Amakusa was also a sage. Whether it was Leonidas, Baguzan, Soki, or even Fuma Kotaro, they were just generals. Although some of these generals also had some commanding ability, it was better to send a commander to command them. Furthermore, if it was Shiro Amakusa, it would be quite easy for him to lead a group of local generals. And Shiro Amakusa had another task, which was to monitor Ibaraki Dojo. Among the summoned servants, Ibaraki Dojo was the only one who was difficult to restrain. Moreover, Ibaraki Dojo was a ghost. If he was sent to the front line, it was inevitable that Ibaraki Dojo would rebel. Therefore, Shiro Amakusa's task was to monitor Ibaraki Dojo in addition to integrating the team's situation. As heroes, they did not refuse. After all, saving humans was something they were happy to do. In this way, Merlin, Wu-Ming, and Gilgamesh were left in the rear tower. Today, this king is going to deal with the accumulated government affairs. You two stay here for the time being. If you're bored, you can go shopping. With that, Gilgamesh left. Later, Merlin and Wu-Ming were driven out of the tower and went to the street to start their shopping trip. After using a technique to reduce their presence, Merlin and Wu-Ming leisurely strolled through the streets, watching the bustling scene around them. I didn't expect you to come as a servant. Did you have enough of Avalon and want to come out? Don't tell me you came here because you want to save humans, Wu-Ming teased Merlin. Merlin didn't have such thoughts. As a half-human, half-nightmare existence, although he could feel the pain of humans, he couldn't understand the meaning of this pain. This was the nature of Merlin. How could that be? I'm very worried about the crisis of mankind. If mankind is destroyed, I will also be affected. Although I can't understand human feelings, I still like a happy ending. Merlin smiled slyly as he looked at his friend. Since Merlin was summoned, he had been looking at Wu-Ming with a sly smile. Wu-Ming even suspected that Merlin wasn't summoned by Gilgamesh, but appeared as a servant on his own initiative. You already know I'm here, but you still came as a servant. You came out of Avalon. Who would believe that you're not looking for fun? Wu-Ming said casually. Don't say that. We're old friends who haven't seen each other for many years. I came here to see you. Merlin still had a smile on his face. Since you can travel through time and space, you should go to other singularities to help mankind. When you're at the 6th singularity, remember to take care of the queen. Although she has grown, she has gradually lost her love. Although Merlin was still smiling, Wu-Ming heard a trace of pleading in his tone. Merlin had always treated Artoria as his daughter. On the other hand, Wu-Ming, cough cough. As the one who captured the heart of my daughter, you have to take responsibility, my friend. Merlin begged. If Artoria is here, of course, I will go back and take care of her. No matter how much she grows, she is still a little girl. Wu-Ming said matter-of-factly. By the way, you have the clairvoyance, and you also saw the last master of Chaldea. So, what do you think of Tachika? Wu-Ming stopped looking at Merlin's sly face and talked about other things. Tachika? Although she is still a little immature, I have seen her performance in Winterwood City. As for now, she is already very good. Merlin nodded with satisfaction. But, by the way, what's the situation with the woman who was once your master? You took care of her so much. Did you abandon her and fall in love with someone else? Merlin said teasingly while looking at Wu-Ming. Merlin looked at Wu-Ming with a smile on his face. He wanted to keep the goodies within the family. Olga Marie is just a little girl who lacks love. As a servant, I should care about her. Wu-Ming said casually. What was the so-called pure bond? He and Olga Marie were, well, not accepting any rebuttals. Even our king did not receive such care from you. Let me tell you in advance, the 6th singularity has our king, and it is a grown-up king. This made Wu-Ming a little surprised. Merlin's eyes could only see what happened in the present, but not the future or the past. In other words, the 6th singularity had something to do with the Knights of the Round Table. I always feel that you have done something bad. Wu-Ming looked at Merlin with some contempt. How could that be? I just gave that person a little help. Merlin continued with that sly smile. It would be strange if I believe you. Wu-Ming no longer looked at Merlin. Well, then I will leave for a while. After all, the identity of the 2 pillar goddesses has not been investigated. Wu-Ming stopped and said to Merlin, Gilgamesh said before, if you have the ability, you can explore the southern part of Mesopotamia. The north has been invaded by magical beasts. Even if the 3 goddesses alliance, they will not act together. Then goodbye, I'm almost done shopping. I will go find King Gilgamesh first. I don't want to do the hard work of running. Merlin said lazily. Don't want to run, I think King Gilgamesh will soon give you a task. Wu-Ming smiled mischievously. Thank you for your kind words. Then, Merlin walked in the direction of the tower, and Wu-Ming also walked out of the Uruk city. Outside the city, Wu-Ming looked at the north. At present, there is only one kind of magical beast, and for the time being, there is no need to worry about Tiamat's attack. For some reason, Tiamat did not appear. It seemed that she was constantly producing a magical beast army. Then I will go to the south and take a look. With that said, Wu Ming's figure swayed, and then a giant dragon soared into the sky. Chapter 389. Flapping his wings, Wu Ming looked down at the land of Mesopotamia. Along the way, he even killed a few lone demonic beasts that came out of nowhere. However, Wu Ming noticed a problem. Like mass-produced clones, not only did these demonic beasts look the same, they were all wild beasts similar to the red-furred lion. Through his own senses, Wu Ming noticed that these demonic beasts had abnormally short lives. It was as if they were soldiers born for war, Wu Ming said as he looked at the corpses of the demonic beasts. How sad. Has Tiamat fallen to this extent? Although Wu Ming was not really a descendant of Tiamat, because of the connection between them in the legend, Wu Ming still cared about Tiamat. After shaking his head, Wu Ming no longer thought about anything else. He transformed into a giant dragon again and flew into the sky, towards the south. What a nostalgic scene, Wu Ming said. Back then, he came to Mesopotamia by accident. Later on, he became the protector of the Uruk and Gilgamesh's teacher. Although there were many gods in Mesopotamia back then, these gods were quite obedient. Only a few gods like Ishtar liked to cause trouble. Now that the gods had disappeared, the demonic beasts had begun to wreak havoc in the north. Although it was not that the people had no way of making a living, it was not much better. Just like the few lone demonic beasts that Wu Ming encountered earlier, only God knew where they came from to the rear of the Uruk. If a normal person encountered them, there would only be one outcome. Mesopotamia was not small. Wu Ming could not protect all the people of Mesopotamia all the time. Therefore, Wu Ming could only eliminate the demonic beasts that he encountered. After arriving at the southern city of Mesopotamia, Wu Ming noticed something unusual. Forest. That's right. There was a forest before Wu Ming. In the south of Uruk, the land that was originally flat in Wu Ming's memory had now become a forest. The original southernmost city, Elidu, had been completely swallowed by the forest. Of course, it was not impossible for the environment to have changed after Wu Ming left for so long. However, this was the barren land of Mesopotamia. Although the Euphrates River and the Tigris River ran through the land of Mesopotamia was still barren. Although it was possible to plant crops that could survive normally, it was rare to see a forest like this in Mesopotamia. Only the northernmost part of Mesopotamia, which was close to the border of Mesopotamia, had large fir forests. Other than that, there were no forests in Uruk or any other place. Not to mention, Wu Ming could tell that the forest in the distance was not a local species. It's a bit like a tropical rainforest, Wu Ming said as he flew in the sky and looked at the forest in the distance. Apart from that, the rainforest also contained an extremely strong mana. If Wu Ming was not close to it, he would not have noticed it. This place is just giving away 300 taels of silver. Wu Ming sneered. If Gilgamesh were here, he would definitely attach great importance to this place. Due to the high concentration of mana in the atmosphere, ordinary people in this era did not pay much attention to forests with strong mana. If an ordinary person were to approach this forest, they would instantly feel that something was wrong and would choose to escape, not to mention whether they could adapt and survive in this era. This was because this forest with a high concentration of mana was like a poisonous forest to them. The genes engraved in their bones would urge them to leave, and they would die if they continued to go deeper. However, such a forest was like swimming in water to Wu Ming. It did not affect him at all. Wu Ming looked down at Ur City. The people in the south were the furthest away from the front line of the magical beasts in the north, so they seemed to be the safest. Wu Ming then flapped his wings and flew towards Ur City, ready to gather some information. After about 10 minutes, a figure walked out of Ur City. This person was Wu Ming. Wu Ming revealed his identity. The mayor of Ur City did not suspect him. In his opinion, Hyunryong's holy aura could not be faked. The mayor of Ur City immediately received Wu Ming and told Wu Ming the news. It appeared suddenly. Wu Ming looked at the rainforest in the distance thoughtfully. According to the mayor of UR City, this forest appeared a few days ago, and the border city in the south, Eridu, had stopped contacting UR City. The mayor of UR City had also sent a message to the Uruk city where Gilgamesh was and asked for help. Unfortunately, the communication technology was outdated in BC, and it seemed that their message had not reached Uruk yet. After that, Wu Ming directly revealed his dragon form outside UR City. He ignored the cries of surprise and worship of the citizens of UR City behind him and flew straight towards the rainforest. When he flew above the rainforest, the manna that hit him was like the hot air that hit him when he walked out of an air-conditioned room. Wu Ming frowned. There's a trace of divinity in the manna. It seems that this place is the residence of a certain goddess. Divinity was a mysterious thing. It could be said that people without divinity could not sense it through their physical bodies. They could only rely on instruments. There's a city called Eridu to the south of UR City. It's very likely that the goddess has directly occupied Eridu and treated it as her own territory. Wu Ming analyzed. He did not know which goddess this was, and he did not know if the citizens of Eridu were still alive. However, he could confirm that the goddess of this rainforest was not a local goddess. The gods of Mesopotamia would not have anything to do with rainforests. When it came to rainforests, the easiest place to think of would be Latin America. Could it be a god from the Mayan divine system or the Aztec divine system? Wu Ming pondered. With that thought, Wu Ming decided to just barge in and take a look. With his strength as a rider, even if he could not defeat the other party, he could still escape. At this moment, creatures flew out from the rainforest one after another. When he took a closer look, he realized that they were ancient pterosaurs. Ancient pterosaurs? Seems like I've been underestimated. Wu Ming said helplessly. Roar. Countless ancient pterosaurs roared angrily and rushed toward Wu Ming, who was many times larger than them. These pterosaurs had sharp mouths and sharp claws that shone with a cold light. They looked extremely dangerous. However, to Wu Ming, who had grade A durability, they were no threat at all. Clang, clang, clang. The group of pterosaurs collided with Wu Ming, producing countless sounds of metal colliding. They're not afraid of me. It seems that these are all controlled by that goddess. To Wu Ming, who could influence and control fantasy breeds, these pterosaurs had ignored his suppression and attacked him. There was no doubt that they were controlled by someone. Roar. In an instant, Wu Ming roared angrily and released his dragon power, directly killing this group of pterosaurs. Then, Wu Ming looked at a certain spot in the forest and flew over. Chapter 390. Wu Ming landed, and what he saw was a city surrounded by countless vines and trees. There was no one in the city, but there were traces of human life in the surroundings. It seemed like it had been there for the past few days. Sure enough, Eric Metropolis has become the territory of that goddess. Wu Ming said as expected. Because his dragon form was somewhat restricted in Eric Metropolis, Wu Ming removed his noble phantasm and turned into his human form. Then, Wu Ming looked at the vines that were in the way and thought of something. Come out, Funbaba. Wu Ming waved his hand, and a white spear jumped out of Wu Ming's sleeve and merged into the ground. Wu. Following a whimpering sound, a green creature that looked like a bear or a deer with two horns on its head emerged from the ground. Just like climbing up from the water to land, Funbaba's appearance did not have any effect on the ground. Woo woo woo. After coming out, Funbaba rubbed against Wu Ming like a spoiled child and softly whimpered. Although Wu Ming's dragon form was much bigger than Funbaba, with Wu Ming's current human form, Funbaba would swallow Wu Ming in one bite. Moreover, with Funbaba's love for Wu Ming, if he was not careful, Funbaba might really swallow Wu Ming in one bite. Sorry, I haven't seen you in a long time. It's my fault, forgive me. Wu Ming touched Funbaba lovingly and said with a bitter smile. Business is more important, I'll make it up to you in the future. Wu Ming touched Funbaba's head again and became serious. Woo woo, Funbaba reluctantly called out, but it didn't bother Wu Ming anymore. Funbaba gently lifted its leg, and an invisible force spread out. The vines and trees that were in the way moved away as if they had grown legs. Funbaba was the mythical beast of the forest. Something of this level was still possible. Let's go, Funbaba. Wuming jumped onto Funbaba's huge head. Funbaba whimpered and began to move towards the inner part of Eldo. After entering Eidolon, Wuming noticed that there were not many trees or vines on the streets. Do they not want these people to go out, or are they simply guarding against my arrival? Wuming was more inclined to the former. After all, the obstacles could not stop Wuming from moving forward. However, Wuming felt that the other party's goal was the latter. After all, there were traces of human activity at the entrance of Eldo. At this time, people started to poke their heads out of the houses in Eldo. The people of Eldo are all fine? Wuming was surprised. However, this also explained why there were traces of human activity at the entrance of Eldo. This is Master Hyunryong? It's Master Hyunryong and the mythical beast Funbaba. Master Hyunryong, are you here to save us? Master Hyunryong. In an instant, countless people of Eldo who saw Wuming and Funbaba ran out and knelt before Wuming, begging for Wuming to save them. However, most of these people were women and children. Only a small portion of them were men. Could it be that they were sacrificed? Wuming thought. Everyone, please calm down. Then Wuming opened his mouth. His voice was filled with light as it entered everyone's ears. In an instant, everyone calmed down. Wuming directly used his holy aura to calm the people's unstable emotions. Master Hyunryong, you are right, Master Hyunryong. Master Hyunryong, you must save us. Everyone calmed down. Although they were still begging for Wuming to save them, their tone was very calm. So, what happened here? Wuming jumped down from the Funbaba and asked. After a while, everyone told Wuming everything that happened. King Gilgamesh had returned and ruled Uruk as a wise king. Their vassal cities were able to benefit from this and develop well. Not long after, news of a magical beast invasion came from the north. King Gilgamesh organized an army to fight against the magical beasts. Since they were in the southernmost region, they didn't have to worry about being attacked by demonic beasts. Although they would occasionally encounter one or two demonic beasts that came to the south, the people of Eidolon were still able to subdue and kill them. However, at some point in time, the whole of Eldo was surrounded by forests overnight. Vines and trees also appeared in Eldo. After that, a woman who claimed to be a goddess came. She said that she was the feathered serpent god. After the people of Eldo witnessed the power of the feathered serpent god, she announced that this place had become her territory. However, to Wuming's surprise, the feathered serpent god did not do anything evil after ruling Eldo. The people of Eldo continued to live their lives. However, good things did not last long. Magical beasts would attack from time to time. Although the people of Eldo were able to subdue and kill them, there were still casualties. Moreover, the number of magical beasts had increased over the past few days. Therefore, the feathered serpent god made a deal with the people. I can protect you from the magical beasts, but you must send a man to my temple every day. In order to survive, after weighing the pros and cons, the people agreed to the feathered serpent god's request. In the following days, the people would choose a man and send him to the feathered serpent god's temple in Eldo. Eldo was not attacked by magical beasts again. However, the people found that none of the men who were sent to the temple returned. No one knew if they were dead or alive. Gradually, the people of Eldo became afraid. However, because of the magical beasts outside, they did not dare to break the contract until Wuming arrived. I understand. Everyone, go back to your houses. I will talk to the feathered serpent god. Don't worry. Using his holy aura again, Wuming persuaded the people to go back to their houses. Otherwise, as Wuming expected, the men would have been used as sacrifices. However, if it was really the feathered serpent god, the sacrifice would be a joke. The feathered serpent god hated living sacrifices. Therefore, either the feathered serpent god was not the feathered serpent god, or there was something else going on. Let's go, Funbaba. Let's go take a look at the temple in Eldo. Wuming jumped on Funbaba's head and patted Funbaba's head. Woo woo. Accompanied by the sound of Funbaba's footsteps and cries, the huge green beast headed towards the temple built by the feathered serpent god. Chapter 391. Because Funbaba was not small, Funbaba quickly brought Wuming to the temple located at the edge of Edo. The Mayan pyramidal building towered in front of Wuming, surrounded by a mysterious and lush forest. Fortunately, the temple and the forest were located at the edge of Edo. If the temple and the forest were placed in the center of Edo, the entire city would have become a forest. Funbaba stopped and did not move forward. Funbaba stopped in front of the forest. After trying for a moment, it shook its head and let out a whimper. This time, it was really whimpering. Fortunately, Wuming quickly stabilized himself when Funbaba shook its head. Otherwise, he would have fallen. Funbaba also knew that it had made a mistake. Coupled with the fact that it could no longer control the trees, Funbaba's whimpers became even deeper. Okay, just be careful next time. Wuming patted Funbaba's head. After stabilizing himself, Wuming looked at the pyramid-shaped temple and the surrounding forest. As expected, these trees are no longer under your control. Wuming also guessed that there would be times when Funbaba would not be able to control them. The feathered god was known as the god of agriculture. It was easy for her to hasten the growth of plants. Regardless of whether or not the other party was the real feathered god, at the very least, she had the ability to hasten the growth of the forest overnight. From the location of the other party's temple, the forest must be under her control. It was reasonable that Funbaba could not control it. After all, Funbaba was a mythical creature of the forest, and the feathered god was a god-level existence in Aztec mythology. Wuming jumped off Funbaba's head and said to Funbaba, "In that case, wait for me here. If this is the real feathered god, I believe that as a good god, she will not choose to fight with me." After all, the feathered serpent god was a kind deity. As someone who loved humans as much as Wuming, the two of them should not attack. However, he couldn't rule out the possibility that the other party wasn't the feathered serpent god, or that even if the other party was the feathered serpent god, the feathered serpent god wouldn't hesitate to attack. Wuming was also confused about this. The Quetzalcoatl seemed to be on the opposite side of the people of Mesopotamia. Therefore, Wuming wanted to talk to her after learning that the goddess here called herself the Quetzalcoatl. Wuming wanted to figure out what exactly the three goddesses' alliance was and what their respective objectives were. Funbaba responded and nodded. "Then, can the leopard over there come out? You've been following us all the way." Wuming said casually to a certain spot in the forest. "Rustle, rustle." As soon as Wuming finished speaking, the forest in the place he was looking at shook, and the leaves rustled. It was just that this voice gave people a feeling of being startled. What? You actually found the super hidden leopard man. Damn it, looks like he's a strong opponent. With a swoosh, a guy wearing a yellow-spotted leopard suit scurried out. Then he looked at Wuming as if he was facing a formidable enemy. This made Wuming feel a little helpless. In fact, Wuming had felt that someone was watching him ever since he came to Elidu, but until now, Wuming had not found out where the person who was watching him was. After that, Wuming just wanted to trick the person who was watching him, but he did not expect that it would actually work. Are you still a god? Wuming looked at the guy who called himself the Leopard Man with some surprise. Wuming could feel divinity from this guy who called himself the Leopard Man, which meant that this guy was a goddess. However, this guy seemed like a joke no matter how he looked at it. A goddess wearing a leopard coat? Please forgive Wuming for not knowing what a goddess likes. I didn't expect you to have such a good eye. That's right, this goddess is the Leopard Man. The Leopard Man who thought that Wuming was scared by his identity laughed proudly, but this way, he was even more inconsistent with the word goddess. After thinking about Ishtar, and looking at the leopard in front of him who was laughing shamelessly, Wuming helplessly covered his face. Even Funbaba could not accept it. How could a goddess be such an existence? Funbaba, she's yours. Wuming did not even look at her, and directly pointed at the Leopard Man who was still laughing. Funbaba replied, then lightly stomped his feet, and several vines rose from under the Leopard Man's feet. What? The leopard man was shocked and quickly jumped out of the vine-catching area. It had to be said that although as a goddess, the leopard man was not qualified at all, as a warrior, the leopard man was undoubtedly qualified. In terms of monitoring prey in the dense forest, the leopard man was also an impeccable hunter. Although the density of magic in the dense forest was too high, and the detection of magic was affected, even with Wu Ming's vigilance, he still did not find the leopard man's position, which was enough to show how powerful the leopard man was. And the reason why Wu Ming gave such a powerful leopard man to Funbaba to deal with was because Funbaba was also not a weak existence. According to the legends, Gilgamesh and Enkidu worked together to defeat the divine beast of the forest, Funbaba, and obtained countless treasures. From this point of view, Funbaba seemed to be very weak. But don't forget, if Gilgamesh and Enkidu worked together to defeat it, how could it be weak? The answer was naturally no. Funbaba had been using this stance, but in fact, Funbaba also had other stances, but because of Wu Ming, Funbaba did not use any other stances. Even Gilgamesh and Enkidu would find it difficult to deal with it. Seeing that the attack did not hit, Funbaba quickly released another attack, and several vines once again appeared under the leopard man's feet. This time, the vines were controlled by Funbaba at an extremely tricky angle, and ordinary people would not be able to dodge them. You're really fast, but you're still not as fast as me. The leopard man unexpectedly dodged the attack again, and this time, the leopard man's expression became serious. Woo-woo! Funbaba was not to be outdone and cried out. Wu Ming looked at the leopard man in surprise, but because of his trust in Funbaba, Wu Ming directly entered the forest. Try to capture Funbaba alive. Wu Ming instructed. Woo-woo-woo-woo-woo, Funbaba replied, and at the same time, said a few words to the leopard man. What? You actually dare to say, take me down in 5 rounds? Then I'll let you see how powerful I, leopard man, am. Wu Ming did not expect the leopard man to be able to converse with Funbaba, and he felt a little helpless. I always feel that this leopard man is actually a funny character, Wu Ming said as he walked through the forest. And just as Wu Ming walked through the forest, he was greeted by a big sister's hug. Let's wrestle. Chapter 392. Let's wrestle. Accompanied by a burst of unusually happy laughter, a seemingly weak arm extended towards Wu Ming. However, this arm gave Wu Ming a very dangerous feeling. If I'm caught by this arm, I'll be finished even if I don't die? Wu Ming was shocked. In an instant, the blonde lady grabbed Wu Ming and fiercely threw Wu Ming over her shoulder. Boom! Wu Ming's body slammed into the ground. The ground around Wu Ming cracked and made a loud noise. Ah, it's a substitute. The blonde lady let go of Wu Ming, who had fallen to the ground. Then, Wu Ming, who had been thrown to the ground by the blonde lady, changed. At a speed visible to the naked eye, Wu Ming's body turned into wood. Using his clothes as a medium, Wu Ming successfully escaped Quizzer's fatal fall. I don't dare to be caught by that move of yours. Even if my durability is B grade, I wouldn't dare to try. At this time, Wu Ming's voice came from behind the blonde lady. After all, it would be troublesome if he died. The blonde lady turned her head and saw Wu Ming standing not far away, unharmed. His upper body was naked. Oh, you've taken off all your clothes as soon as we meet. It really makes me a little embarrassed. The blonde lady said happily without any embarrassment. Because the density of magic in the dense forest was too high, and the blonde lady was too fast, Wu Ming did not notice her approach until he saw her. Now, Wu Ming looked seriously at the blonde lady who was exposed in front of him. Wu Ming felt a high level of divinity from her. In this case, presumably, this goddess was not lying. With such a high level of divinity, no one could impersonate her except a god of the main god level. She was probably the Quetzalcoatl. You must be the feathered serpent god. Wu Ming did not beat around the bush. That's right, big sister, I am the Quetzalcoatl. You can call me Quetzalcoatl, the Uruk Hyunryong. Quetzalcoatl smiled at Wu Ming. Although Wu Ming was a little surprised by the feathered serpent god's gender, he could still accept it. After all, there were so many examples. It seems that the pterosaurs outside the rainforest were controlled by you. Coupled with the greeting gift just now, it really surprised me. Wu Ming said with a smile. After all, I don't really want to see you, Yura Hyunryong. In an instant, Quizzer's face looked as if she had put on a performance that transcended the horizon. She was abnormally terrified. Looking at Quetzalcoatl, who looked more like an evil god than a good god, Wu Ming was very calm. I want to know about the three goddesses' alliance and your respective goals. That's why I'm here. Wu Ming acted as if he did not see Quetzalcoatl's performance and asked directly. Also, the residents of Aidu told me that a man is offered as a sacrifice to you every day. I want to know what's going on. However, Quetzalcoatl smiled. Didn't I say, Yura Hyunryong, I don't welcome your arrival. If you leave now, I can let bygones be bygones. But if you continue to stay, I'll have to use my super wrestling skills. Quetzalcoatl's smile reached her ears as she looked at Wu Ming with an abnormally terrifying expression. I understand. Wu Ming closed his eyes, looking as if he had understood. Wu Ming opened his eyes abruptly and said seriously, then, let's have a fight. The winner will listen to the loser. Whether it's killing, trampling, enslaving, or toying with the loser, it's all up to you. How about it? Oh, it's quite interesting, isn't it? I accept, big sister. Quetzalcoatl instantly cancelled her performance and reverted to her loving big sister appearance, agreeing to Wu Ming's suggestion. Then, in less than a few seconds, Quetzalcoatl used her performance again and smiled maliciously at Wu Ming. In that case, you'd better be prepared to die, Hyunryong. Then, as if he had achieved his goal, Wu Ming's lips curled up into a smile. With this, the contract is established. As soon as Wu Ming finished speaking, the sound of chains could be heard. Clatter. What? The shimmering golden chains wrapped around Quetzalcoatl, causing her to cry out in surprise. Quetzalcoatl looked at the center of the cracked ground behind her. The pristine white robe seemed to be worn by an invisible person, hovering above the ground like a ghost. Several chains shot out from the robe and extended to Quetzalcoatl's body. The chains that bound Quetzalcoatl came from this robe. Without a doubt, this was the doing of her enemy, Hyunryong. You bastard! How dare you sneak attack me? Quizzard glared at Wu Ming as if she was being treated unfairly. Little did she know that she was the one who had started the sneak attack. I've already said that the contract is established. From then on, our battle will begin. Why, is Lord Quetzalcoatl going back on your word? Wu Ming crossed his arms and looked at Quetzalcoatl with a smile. You despicable bastard! Watch me break these chains. Quetzalcoatl displayed her irritable yen-yi and said rather angrily. Then, she began to struggle in vain. By the way, let me tell you something. As long as you're a god, you can forget about breaking free after being bound by this chain. Even if Tiamat came, she wouldn't be able to break free either, Wu Ming said rather arrogantly. Quetzalcoatl ignored Wu Ming and struggled to break free of the chains. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could not break free from the shackles of the golden chains. That was not all. Quetzalcoatl found that her magical power, divine power, and other powers were all bound by these golden chains and could not be used at all. Damn it! Where the hell did you get these chains from? Not only can I not break free, but my powers are also sealed. Even the Enkidu isn't this perverted. Quetzalcoatl gave up on struggling and said irritably, What? You're not going to struggle anymore? Wu Ming laughed. Of course, Quetzalcoatl could not break free of the Enkidu. The Enkidu was something used to control the god of law, so it was impossible for Quetzalcoatl, who had extremely high divinity, to break free. If it was the original version of Enkidu, Quizzer would still be able to break free from the shackles of Enkidu by relying on his own attributes, but only by a little. Her strength had not reached A rank, so it was impossible for her to break free of the Enkidu's shackles through pure strength. Moreover, Wu Ming's Enkidu was the manifestation of the Enkidu that was attached to the main body of the great origin, Wu Ming. Once a god like Quetzalcoatl was trapped by the Enkidu that was no longer what it used to be. With the current Enkidu's ability, even Tiamat would not be able to do anything about it. Ah, I failed. I admit defeat. You win. Can you let go of me now? Quetzalcoatl removed her facial expression and revealed the look of a big sister again. She smiled gently and looked at Wu Ming. And so, the battle between Hyunryong and the feathered serpent god ended with Hyunryong insta-killing the feathered serpent god. After hearing Quetzalcoatl admit defeat, Wu Ming released the shackles of the Enkidu on Quetzalcoatl. Then, let's start with the questions. Chapter 393. Wu Ming was not worried that Quetzalcoatl would go back on her word, because the agreement between Wu Ming and Quetzalcoatl would be upheld by the world. Most importantly, this was the end of the gods' era, and both Wu Ming and Quetzalcoatl were gods, so there was no need for them to sign any contract. They only needed to make a verbal agreement. Both Quetzalcoatl and Wu Ming were well aware of this, so Quetzalcoatl directly admitted defeat and let Wu Ming untie. Wu Ming did not hesitate in the slightest. So, what do you want to ask? Quetzalcoatl asked casually. Quetzalcoatl, who had become Wu Ming's slave, was not worried that Wu Ming would do anything to her. She looked very relaxed. Then let's talk about the disappearance of men in Aidu first. After all, if Quetzalcoatl was really the feathered serpent god, then the disappearance of men would become a point of suspicion. After all, the feathered serpent god hated living sacrifices. They, of course, are wrestling with me, Quetzalcoatl said matter-of-factly. Because none of them can take a single hit from me, I chose to have the residents of Aidu sacrifice a man every day. They are all resting in my temple now, and when they have recovered, they will wrestle with me. Quetzalcoatl looked rather distressed that no one was wrestling with her. But Wu Ming did not expect that Quetzalcoatl would ask the residents of Aidu to sacrifice a man every day just to have someone to wrestle with. Although Wu Ming did not know much about wrestling, Quetzalcoatl seemed to have used wrestling techniques when she attacked Wu Ming at the beginning. How much did she like wrestling? Wu Ming remembered that the feathered serpent god did not seem to have any wrestling attributes. How did her hobby of wrestling come to be? Seriously, it's rare that you don't fall, but you can't live on? Wu Ming helplessly covered his face. Of course. Wrestling is a religion. If possible, I want to become the god of wrestling. Quetzalcoatl did not have the slightest bit of self-awareness. Instead, he wanted to become the god of wrestling. Next question. What is your relationship with the mother of magical beasts in the north, Tiamat? Wu Ming asked. After all, one of the two pillar goddesses was in the south and the other was in the north. One was waging a war against the magical beasts, while the other was secretly expanding her territory. Wu Ming didn't believe that the two of them had nothing to do with each other. How could it be so coincidental that they were doing it at the same time? You've really hit the nail on the head. Quetzalcoatl smiled in surprise. I'm in an alliance with them, Quetzalcoatl said. After a while, Quetzalcoatl told Wu Ming everything. The mastermind had set up the Holy Grail at the singularity and used it as a medium to summon himself and Tiamat in the north. He left a message that whoever obtained the Uruk's Holy Grail first would become the new goddess of this era and control the fate of this era. Therefore, the two pillar goddesses competed separately. Tiamat started from the north, while Quetzalcoatl started from the south. One kept producing magical beasts, crushing the northern cities with their numbers and pushing towards the south. The other relied on the concealment of the dense forest and the rapid and fatal attacks of the magical beasts in the north as cover. Quetzalcoatl slowly expanded towards the north. The goal of the two pillar goddesses was the Uruk in the middle of Mesopotamia because the Holy Grail they were fighting for was in Gilgamesh's hands. However, compared to Tiamat, who was producing magical beasts and killing humans, Quetzalcoatl was much milder. After all, I still quite like humans. This was Quetzalcoatl's statement. The protection that Quetzalcoatl mentioned was true. She loved humans from the bottom of her heart. Therefore, her method was to occupy the Uruk and obtain the Holy Grail from Gilgamesh to become the new goddess of this era. Therefore, with the protection of the pterosaur, no humans in Quetzalcoatl's territory were killed by magical beasts that came out of nowhere. This was especially so for wrestling. Although those who wrestled with Quetzalcoatl were covered in wounds, they did not die. Moreover, Quetzalcoatl would provide them with treatment and water to survive. Other than exchanging a few blows with Quizhar every day, the rest of the time was quite comfortable. At the very least, their lives were not in danger. Why do I feel like a gigolo? Wuming complained in his heart. Tiamat and Quizhar established an alliance to conquer the Uruk together. At the same time, they also established a contract. No one was to hinder the other, attack the other, or harm the other. Once this contract was broken, one would receive a backlash from the world. It could be said that the damage would be doubled for those of the same level. Perhaps, the moment before they attacked, they would be killed by the heavenly punishment of breaking the oath. However, a new goddess appeared not long ago, Quizhar said. The new goddess also knew that she would become the goddess of the new era if she obtained the Holy Grail. Therefore, she also wanted to cooperate with Tiamat and Quizhar and join their alliance. However, in reality, although it was called cooperation and joining the alliance, it was actually just joining a contract with the other goddesses not to harm each other. After all, it would be terrible if Tiamat and Quizhar joined forces to deal with her. Because this goddess was the last to join, and because of her uniqueness, she was not assigned any offensive tasks. Instead, she was in a standby state. In other words, the three goddesses are in an alliance. Wuming pondered over Quizhar's words. He did not suspect that Quizhar was lying. She could not lie because of the restrictions of the contract. That's right. It's the situation of the three goddesses fighting for themselves in the alliance. Quizhar smiled. So, who is the third goddess? Wuming asked. After all, the contents of the three goddesses' contract did not state that they could not disclose information about the other goddesses. Therefore, it was fine for Quizhar to reveal information to Wuming. It's the native goddess of Mesopotamia, the mistress of the underworld, Ereshkigal. Quizhar said the goddess name. It's her. Wuming was a little shocked. Wuming finally understood why the third goddess was not assigned an offensive task. Ereshkigal was born to manage the underworld. No god liked to manage it, and she could not leave the underworld for the rest of her life. She could only stay in the underworld. Therefore, Ereshkigal could not attack the Uruk on land. However, because Ereshkigal could not leave the shackles of the underworld, she had more powerful authority. Even if she was in the underworld, she was invincible. No god or human who came to the underworld could resist her. Even if she could not be on land, Ereshkigal could still operate from below the city. She could pull the souls of humans on the ground into the underworld in an instant. This created a terrifying scene. The bodies of humans were cold in their sleep, and the entire city became a ghost town. This is really useful information. Wuming nodded. This trip was not a waste. Since you have no intention of killing humans, how about we stop here? Wuming looked at Quizhar. If he could solve the problem of Quizhar before she was in danger, Wuming's trip from the Uruk to the extreme south was not in vain. Chapter 394. Apart from that, Wuming had another idea. After all, Quizhar was also a goddess. Even if she could not attack the other pillar goddesses, she could still keep the other goddesses in check. She could also deal with the magical beasts. After all, Quizhar was already doing that. She was protecting the people in her territory from the magical beasts. After all, the restriction of the contract was that he could not attack the goddess. Therefore, Wuming wanted to rope Quizhar into his side. Wuming believed that with Quizhar's addition, the Uruk side would be like a tiger that had grown wings. Even if it did not work, it would be fine as long as Quizhar did not expand her territory and attack the Uruk. Sure, Quizhar said with a smile. You agreed so decisively? Wuming was a little surprised. After all, I was defeated. Even if it was a sneak attack, I would still admit defeat. That's what it means to be inferior. Looking at Quizhar like this, Wuming could not help but think of the legend of the feathered serpent god. Due to being drunk by other gods with ulterior motives, the country under her rule was ruined by the other gods. After the feathered serpent god woke up, she blamed herself for her mistake and decided to leave this place to reflect on herself. In other words, the feathered serpent god was a god who accepted defeat and admitted defeat. Judging from this point, the feathered serpent god was really a good god. However, in the eyes of humans, she was still a strange god. If you want to contribute a man every day, you should make it clear. If it's just wrestling, it's not a big deal. You can also let them go home. They can come over and wrestle with you every day. You can also hold a wrestling tournament and train these people who don't know how to wrestle. That's too unbecoming of a goddess, Quizhar responded to Wu Ming with a smile. In that case, let these men go. I'll ask King Gilgamesh. You can hold a wrestling tournament and train these people to wrestle. I'll show them to you. For people who loved wrestling, it was good to be able to watch an exciting wrestling competition. Yes, you win. You have the final say. Quizhar waved her hand, indicating that she agreed with Wu Ming's words. Wu Ming looked at the regretful Quizhar and pondered for a moment before speaking. If it's wrestling, I can actually play along with you. After all, it's more interesting if the opponent is a god of the same level, isn't it? Wu Ming smiled. After all, Wu Ming and Quizhar had only exchanged a few blows before Quizhar was bound by Wu Ming's Enkidu. There was no fight at all. It wasn't just Quizhar. In fact, Wu Ming also felt rather regretful. His opponent was the legendary feathered serpent god. If he didn't fight, he would be letting down this fated encounter. Really? Good. Let's wrestle first. Quizhar was overjoyed and rushed towards Wu Ming. Hey, wait. I'm not talking about now. Come on. I'll be very gentle. Dong. Wu Ming walked out of the temple's jungle strangely. Funbaba, who was waiting outside, was lying there obediently. Wu, seeing Wu Ming come out, Funbaba cried out in joy. She sat up and rubbed her upper body against Wu Ming. Yo, Funbaba. Wu Ming greeted Funbaba, who was once again rubbing against him enthusiastically. However, Wu Ming's movements were slightly stiff. Woo. Funbaba tilted her head in confusion. It's okay, I've already solved the feathered serpent god's problem. It's just that I was chatting with the feathered serpent god just now and she was a little excited. Wu Ming said with a fake smile. Thinking of Wu Ming just now, Wu Ming felt helpless. Because he had aroused Quizhar's fighting spirit, no matter how Wu Ming persuaded her, she couldn't calm down. Therefore, Wu Ming fought with Quizhar. Then, it turned out that Wu Ming really didn't know how to wrestle and was repeatedly thrown by Quizhar. Wu Ming always felt that this was Quizhar's revenge for him using Enkidu to plot against Quizhar. She didn't show any mercy at all. Fortunately, Wu Ming's own martial arts skills were good. After learning Quizhar's wrestling skills, he successfully made a scene with Quizhar. As a result, the jungle and even the land around the temple seemed to have been ravaged by a storm. What a good fall. I didn't even dare to use my strength against a human. Indeed, it's more comfortable to fall against a god of the same level. This was Quizhar's face full of joy after the incident. In that case, I'll go make arrangements for the pterosaur first. I'll send all the men in my temple back to Eric Metropolis. Then, Quizhar entered the temple and Wu Ming walked out. Wu Ming smiled at Funbaba and touched his lower back. This guy really can't be merciful. Ouch, 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 ouch. Wu Ming touched his lower back that was injured by Quizhar's fall and said with some pain in his heart. By the way, where did the leopard man go? After all, Wu Ming had initially left the leopard man to Funbaba to deal with. Now, Funbaba was lying here and resting comfortably. Then, where did the leopard man go? Woo. Funbaba indicated that he didn't slack off and then pointed to his butt with his head. Then, Funbaba lifted his butt and left this position. Then, what appeared in front of Wu Ming was a long cylindrical object that was constantly squirming. It seemed to be a person entangled in vines. After squirming twice and feeling that the thing pressing down on him was gone, a head popped out from the long cylindrical vine. Unsurprisingly, this was the leopard man's head with the jacket. The person in the vine was the leopard man. Damn it. How dare you press the honorable leopard man under your butt? I don't think I'll forgive you. The leopard man, who only had his head exposed, roared frantically and kept squirming his body that was tied in the vines. He looked like he would rather die than submit. Looking at the leopard man like this, Wu Ming remembered what Quizhar said. When Wu Ming wrestled with Quizhar, He asked her what was the relationship between the leopard man and her. "Ah, that leopard, you can play with him as you wish, just don't kill him," Quizhar said with a smile. When he thought of Quizhar's words, Wuming wanted to laugh. This leopard is really pitiful. Then, Wuming had the heart to tease the leopard. "Did you know? Quetzalcoatl told me that your meat is of the highest quality among the gods. As a friendly meeting between us two gods, she gave you to me." Wuming squatted down and looked at the leopard man, who was in a daze. In other words, you're my slave. By the way, I haven't eaten the meat of a god before. I'm in for a treat today." Wuming looked at the leopard man with a smile, but this smile looked like the smile of a demon no matter how you looked at it. "How is that possible? How could Cooker betray me? You must be lying," the leopard man said, somewhat shaken. "Oh, is that so? Then do you need me to prove it to you personally?" With that, Wuming stood up, and then a flame and a knife appeared in his hand, as if he was really going to cook the leopard man. Wuming looked down at the leopard man condescendingly. Wait a minute. Don't eat me, my meat isn't delicious at all." The leopard man's face was pale, and he was so scared that his eyes rolled back. "That's not up to you. Help! Cooker!" Chapter 395. Wuming and Fanbaba left Aidu. Wuming told the residents of Aidu the truth and promised that the Quetzalcoatl god would return the males who were sacrificed as sacrifices. He also promised that the residents of Aidu would be able to go out and interact with other cities. However, in exchange for their protection, a wrestling tournament would be held every once in a while. Naturally, the residents of Eidolon agreed wholeheartedly. If they could obtain the protection of a god just by doing this, it would be a win-win situation. Now, the residents of Aidu were relieved. After all, even if they were safe, it was still quite uncomfortable to not be able to rest in peace. Wuming also warned Quetzalcoatl not to continue spreading the jungle. Thus, Uar City, which was supposed to be Wuming's next target, was not swallowed by Quetzalcoatl's jungle. If possible, he also hoped that Quetzalcoatl would send out the pterosaur to eliminate the lone magical beasts that somehow came to the south. Quetzalcoatl naturally agreed. After that, Wuming and Fanbaba began their journey back to Uruk. At the same time, Wuming also told the mayor of Uar City about the feathered serpent god. After that, because Wuming slightly neglected Fanbaba and the magical beast's attacks in the north were not that strong, Wuming decided to ride on Fanbaba and have a good chat with Fanbaba before returning to Uruk. Because of the journey, Wuming and Fanbaba arrived at the wilderness near the Persian Gulf. It was now night time. Wuming sat in front of a fire. A pot floated above the fire. Wuming leaned against Fanbaba's huge and soft body and drank a bowl of meat soup with a satisfied expression. Not far from him was the corpse of a magical beast. It was a magical beast that Wuming encountered along the way. It was ambushing passers-by and was killed by Wuming and made into meat soup. After all, no one said that magical beasts could not be made into food. ****, I'm starting to miss that adventure. Wuming held a bowl of broth and recalled the days when he had just returned from the demonic realm, where he had learned from Skaha and was training alone outside. During that period of time, Wuming was like a chivalrous hero. When he was tired, he would use the sky as his blanket and the earth as his bed. When he was hungry, he would pick wild fruits and hunt animals. When he was thirsty, he would drink spring water or dew before heading to Connaught. In Wuming's eyes, Skaha was more like a teacher than a warrior. Not only did he teach Wuming combat and magic, but he also taught Wuming some principles of being a human being and all kinds of small knowledge. After all, Wuming was an old lady who had lived for a long time. Naturally, she knew a lot after living for a long time. In addition, Skaha saw Wuming as his younger brother, so she taught him a lot. That included survival in the wild. However, it was not very useful for Wuming. Therefore, Wuming had never fallen sick and could sleep anywhere. On the other hand, Wuming's stomach was beyond the stomach of a fantasy breed and could not digest anything. Therefore, survival skills in the wild were just icing on the cake. Paying attention to the dangers in the wild was a lifelong benefit for Wuming. After all, Even the most powerful person would make mistakes one day. Even the most powerful tiger would take a nap. Now, Wuming had Funbaba by his side. With Funbaba's divine beast temperament, no wild beasts or robbers came to attack Wuming. As for those who were related to God, they were only followers and dependents. For example, Wuming and Funbaba, Quizzer and the pterosaur, Tiamat and the magical beasts. However, if there was really an attack, Wuming would not be afraid. After all, he had the strength. Although Wuming did not need to sleep, it was rare to spend a night in the wild. Wuming did not want to spend it all on the road. Moreover, the one who would be tired was Funbaba. Therefore, Wuming was going to stay in the wild with Funbaba for a night. You think so too, Funbaba? Funbaba also cried, indicating that it also agreed. It was the wish of every Funbaba to be able to sleep with its master. After drinking the broth, Wuming tidied up and then went to sleep with Funbaba. After that, Wuming began to dream. He had a strange dream. Wuming came to a black abyss. It was as if he had fallen into a swamp. Wuming's movements were particularly difficult, and he could not see anything clearly. Only a sad song echoed. Wuming could feel the sadness in this song. A mother was helpless and sad to be abandoned by her children. Wuming could not help but be attracted by this song. He gradually looked for the owner of the song in the dark space, trying to drive his body back to his mother's arms. At this moment, Wuming heard Funbaba's cry, and then he was awakened. Woo-woo! Wuming suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the bright sky. His head was a little dizzy as he looked around. Funbaba put down its foreleg that hit Wuming's head, and then rubbed its head against Wuming's head. Its originally anxious appearance calmed down. Wuming didn't know if it was because he was hit by Funbaba or because of the dream, but now his head was quite dizzy, as if he didn't sleep well. That was definitely not a dream, Wuming said with some fear. If it wasn't for Funbaba hitting Wuming hard, I'm afraid that Wuming would really fall into the arms of the owner of the song, and once that happened, Wuming had a hunch that he would never wake up again. After all, his consciousness was transferred from his main body to his servant's body. If his consciousness was captured, then Wuming's servant's body would disappear, and his main body in the root would become an empty shell with only a body and soul, but no consciousness. Simply put, he would be in a vegetative state. Thank you, Funbaba. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid I would have died this time. You've helped me a lot, Wuming said to Funbaba gratefully. Because of being praised by Wuming, Funbaba happily rubbed against Wuming. Wuming touched Funbaba's head and thought thoughtfully. I've never encountered such a situation before. It seems that I have to protect this point. Wuming's body, soul, and consciousness were all born from the root, and compared to the body, Wuming's soul was more powerful. Simply put, negative mental effects such as charm would not work on Wuming. But this time, Wuming almost fell into the enemy's trap while sleeping. More importantly, the pitch-black, immovable space was the interior of the origin black soil. For some reason, Wuming couldn't feel the root of the black mud in his dream at all. Maybe it was the enemy's trick. There's also that singing voice. Wuming did not recognize it even in his dream. Wuming had heard that singing voice before. It was the singing voice he heard when he crossed over to the mirror world in Ilya's world. This familiar feeling. Wuming was silent. For a moment, Wuming shook his head. In short, the enemy is not simply the three goddesses alliance. There are more powerful enemies in the dark. As long as it has something to do with the black mud, it can't be underestimated. This time, Wuming almost fell into the trap of the song. Sorry, Funbaba, things have changed again. I have to fly back to the Uruk. You come back first, Wuming said to Funbaba. Although somewhat reluctant, Funbaba still knew that something unusual had just happened, so it nodded. Then, Funbaba turned into a white spear and integrated into Wuming's body. Then, Wuming transformed into a huge flying dragon and flew to the Uruk. After Wuming left, a sad song sounded on the surface of the Persian Gulf, but it disappeared instantly like an illusion. Chapter 396. After leaving the vicinity of the Persian Gulf, Wuming did not delay any further. He flapped his wings and flew all the way to Uruk in less than an hour. Wuming's wings made a whistling sound. Then, Wuming slowly landed in front of the Uruk city gate. "Sir Hyunryong, you're back." The soldiers guarding the city respectfully greeted the giant dragon in front of them, which was comparable to half of the Uruk city. Gilgamesh had already informed the people of Hyunryong's arrival, so the soldiers guarding the gate were not surprised by Wuming's arrival. Wuming nodded and transformed into his human form. He did not communicate too much with the soldiers. Wuming directly went to the Tower of God at the fastest speed. After all, if he was entangled with the Uruk residents, he would not be able to get away for a while. After arriving at the Tower of God, Wuming happened to meet Siduri, who was walking down the Tower of God. It seemed that Siduri was Gilgamesh's assistant, helping Gilgamesh deal with government affairs. Therefore, it was not strange to meet Chief Priest Siduri in the Tower of God. "Sir Hyunryong, you're back." Siduri bowed slightly and greeted Wuming. "Oh, it's Siduri. How is it? Is your body all right?" Wuming asked with concern. After all, it was because of him that Siduri's vitality was reduced. "It's no longer a big problem. I'm really sorry, Sir Hyunryong. As your priest, not only did I not help you, but I also caused you trouble. Siduri really deserves to die." Siduri shook her head, indicating that she was fine. Then, Siduri began to blame herself again. It had to be said that Siduri was a little too respectful to Wuming. Before Wuming left here, Siduri was also like this. She was clearly told not to be too respectful, but Siduri still believed that she should treat God with respect, especially Hyunryong, who protected the Uruk and allowed the Uruk to develop. Especially after Enkidu's death, Siduri replaced Enkidu as Wuming's personal priest. In Siduri's opinion, she could not be compared to Enkidu at all. This thought made Siduri respect Wuming even more. In addition, not long after Siduri became Wuming's priest, Wuming left the Uruk. This made Siduri have an illusion that, did I disappoint Hyunryong and leave the Uruk? All of this made Siduri respect Wuming very much. "Siduri, I don't like humans being too respectful to gods. This includes myself." Wuming instantly looked at Siduri seriously. Siduri also remembered what Wuming said to Siduri after she became Hyunryong's priest. The reason why Hyunryong protected humans was because he hoped that humans would not have to rely on other gods and gradually become independent. There was no need to treat gods as high and mighty beings. It was okay to have an appropriate amount of respect, but too much respect was wrong. "Yes, I'm very sorry, Lord Hyunryong." Siduri became even more respectful and was about to kneel down. "I say, you don't have to be so respectful to me." Wuming did not know whether to laugh or cry as he supported Siduri, who had not completely knelt down. "Yes, Lord Hyunryong." Siduri said sadly. "That's why you can't become Enkidu." Wuming's words shocked Siduri. She felt as nervous as when the teacher found out that she was copying homework. Her heart began to waver. Yes, Siduri knew that it was because of Enkidu that she was able to serve Hyunryong better now that Enkidu had left. But this is Siduri, isn't it? Wuming looked at Siduri with a smile, then let go of her and walked towards the god's tower. Siduri remained in a half-kneeling position as she stood rooted to the ground. "I am myself." Siduri thought about Wuming's words and said meaningfully. Wuming came to the top floor of the god's tower and walked directly into the room on the top floor. "Oh, you're back, Hyunryong." Gilgamesh put down the clay tablet in his hand and looked at Wuming, who walked in. "Yes, I encountered a lot of things in the south," Wuming said tiredly. "This king can guess from your tired face. Tell this king the good news first." Gilgamesh smiled and said to Wuming, "Other than Tiamat in the north, there are two other pillar goddesses. They are the Quetzalcoatl of Central and South America and the goddess of the underworld of Mesopotamia. They also have the intention of attacking the Uruk. For this reason, the three pillar goddesses have formed the Three Goddesses Alliance." Wuming sat on the chair beside Gilgamesh and reported his news. "This king wants the good news, Hyunryong." Gilgamesh was a little unhappy. Gilgamesh also saw that Wuming deliberately kept him in suspense. Well, good news must be set off by bad news. Next is the good news. Wu Ming waved his hand and smiled mischievously. Tiamat is only active in the north. With the obstruction of the servants, there is no big problem for the time being. Ereshkigal is unable to leave the underworld and was pushed to the east by the other two pillar goddesses. For the time being, there is no sign of an attack. Wu Ming took out the map and pointed to the demonic beasts in the north and the remote areas in the east. As for the Quetzalcoatl in the south, she used the dense forest to protect the city and nibbled away Mesopotamia little by little. Then, Wu Ming pointed to Erech Metropolis in the south. About this king has just received news from Ur City. Erech Metropolis is surrounded by dense forest and can no longer be contacted. Gilgamesh said, "It seems that the news from Ur City has just reached Uruk. But fortunately, when the enemy only occupied Erech Metropolis and did not have time to approach Ur City, I broke into the temple of the Quetzalcoatl and made a bet with the Quetzalcoatl and won." Wu Ming smiled and looked at Gilgamesh. "Oh, you want to test the content of this king's bet? It is nothing more than the winner obeying the loser's words." Gilgamesh said disdainfully. "As expected of Gil. That's right, just like that, I used the heaven lock and defeated the Quetzalcoatl effortlessly." At this point, Gilgamesh was silent. Because the Quetzalcoatl's divinity is a kind deity, I pulled her to our side. She will be in charge of cleaning up the lone magical beasts in the south and will help us when the magical beasts attack. Gilgamesh had just received the news about the lone magical beasts. Gilgamesh had already begun to set up patrols on the main roads of the city. This is still considered good news. Then, did the Quetzalcoatl make any requests? Even if she was a deity, she was still in existence with dignity. Gilgamesh did not believe that she would obey them unconditionally. She only has one request, and that is to let Erech Metropolis hold wrestling competitions at irregular times. Wu Ming smiled awkwardly. Wrestling competitions? What a strange fellow. This king agrees. Gilgamesh frowned, but still agreed to this strange rule. But, it seems that you have other things to report to this king, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh did not think that such a small matter would make Wu Ming tired. Wu Ming was silent for a moment, then spoke. "Hey, Gil, I think I am dreaming of Tiamat." Chapter 397. Wu Ming told Gilgamesh about his experience in the dream. It was definitely not a simple dream. Gilgamesh also took Wu Ming's dream very seriously. This was not the first time Wu Ming had heard this song. When he was traveling through the void, and when he was dreaming last night, these two experiences, coupled with Wu Ming's current identity and that sense of familiarity, made Wu Ming suspect that it was Tiamat. Although Tiamat is constantly producing monsters, this king suspects that Tiamat has not appeared in Mesopotamia. "She is still in the void," Gilgamesh said thoughtfully. Tiamat had indeed been producing monsters, but this did not mean that Tiamat was in the northern mountains. In the original myth, Tiamat was jointly exiled to the interlayer of the world by her children. In the void, Tiamat had been sleeping like this until modern times. Tiamat was awakened by the mastermind behind the fire, and she began to produce monsters to invade the cities in the north. The inaccessible space you dreamt of, coupled with that strange singing voice, it's very likely that Tiamat hasn't escaped. Gilgamesh pondered. But according to what you said, the Quetzalcoatl, Tiamat, and Ereshkigal have met and formed a contract. This does not make sense. Wu Ming listened to Gilgamesh's words, and he was quite distressed. If the three of them had met, it meant that Tiamat was indeed in the northern mountains. If Tiamat was in the void, why would Quetzalcoatl say that he had met with the other two pillar goddesses? And if Tiamat had really come out of the void, why did she not directly destroy the Uruk? Why did she continue to produce monsters to invade Mesopotamia? I did not ask about Tiamat's appearance. What a blunder! Wu Ming shook his head helplessly. However, no one would have thought that Tiamat's whereabouts had become a mystery. Tiamat's body was huge. In theory, Tiamat was comparable to a small island. Even if she was hidden underground, it would be difficult to move. Moreover, they had to consider if they could hide her first. In that case, it is very likely that Tiamat's true body did not come out of the void. The one in the north is Tiamat's clone. Due to lack of power, she could only produce monsters to invade the cities in the north. Wu-Ming thought came to his mind. This king thinks so too. Gilgamesh agreed. Speaking of which, the number of demonic beasts in the north is getting more and more. Although they are all red lions, with the passage of time, these demonic beasts have grown a lot. If there were no servants, I'm afraid the demonic beasts would have attacked us. Gilgamesh took out a new mud tablet and opened a new map. The monsters will rest at night. Although some of them look for food at night, it can be said that it is a very safe time to retreat at night. Then, Gilgamesh pointed to the passages between each town in the north to Wu-Ming. This king's soldiers will let some of the residents in the north retreat through these passages every night. Although there are servants to protect them, the efficiency is too low. Wu-Ming looked at the towns in the north. The roads between the towns were uneven. Some of the surviving towns were not only difficult to travel through, but the residents in the towns were women and children. It was difficult for them to keep up with the rapid retreat at night. Moreover, the map showed that some monsters had appeared even near Nippur city. It could be said that the entire north was no longer safe. So far, with the help of the servants, the north wall established in Nippur city has developed rapidly. But if the reproduction speed and quality of these monsters are improved, they will soon break through. Gilgamesh said calmly. The hidden danger in the south has been solved. There is no more worry in the rear. I can restore my real body to deal with the monsters in the north. The most difficult thing to deal with now is the goddess of the underworld, Ereshkigal, in the east. After all, the enemies on the surface were not terrible, but the enemies in the dark were terrible. As the saying goes, it is easy to dodge a spear in the open but hard to defend against a stab in the dark. For Wu-Ming and the others, Ereshkigal, who could not come to the surface and could only do things in the underworld, was an incomparable headache. That guy has the ability to pull people's souls into the underworld, and Sumer's god, like me, can't exert my power in the underworld. Wu-Ming was a little distressed. As mentioned before, Ereshkigal could only be born in the underworld. She could not leave the underworld, but she had obtained the power to be invincible in the underworld. As long as the gods were in the underworld, they could not fight against Ereshkigal. This king knows that guy. Although it is a bit unsuitable for her to become the new ruler of the Sumer, but for the time being, she should not do anything. Gilgamesh said, the purpose was to make Wu-Ming feel at ease. Then there is no time to lose. I will go to Elysium first and inform Quizhar, and then I will go to the north. Wu-Ming stood up. These things are not urgent. My soldiers are not so weak that they can't even defeat the current demonic beasts. Gilgamesh stopped Wu-Ming's action. What happened, Gil? As Gilgamesh's teacher, Wu-Ming naturally saw Gilgamesh's intention to stop him, but he still had other things to say. Actually, according to the news from the north, a hostile servant has appeared, green hair, a perfect face, white clothes. Gilgamesh did not continue, and Wu-Ming naturally knew who he was talking about. Enkidu? Wu-Ming frowned. Even the chains on Wu-Ming's clothes trembled slightly. The other party has the same combat ability as Enkidu. Although this king does not believe it, this king deliberately went to check Enkidu's tomb, and the body inside has disappeared. Gilgamesh said with some annoyance. His good friend's body was stolen, and it was very likely that Enkidu's personality had been replaced. Thinking of this, Gilgamesh felt a burst of anger. I will go and check, don't worry, Gil. Facing such a thing, Wu-Ming was also a little angry. Although this world was a parallel world, Enkidu was still the Enkidu Wu-Ming knew, and his nature would not change. Then, Wu-Ming looked at the clay tablets around Gilgamesh. You should rest early, I will take over these clay tablets for you today. As soon as Wu-Ming said this, Gilgamesh was very unhappy. This king does not need your help, this king can take care of these clay tablets. I don't want future records to say that Gilgamesh is the first king in history to die from overwork, that would be too embarrassing. Wu-Ming looked at Gilgamesh with a teasing smile. Do you think this king can do whatever he wants just because he's sealed the Gwaili sword? You're really bold, Hyunryong. Gilgamesh looked at Wuming wantonly. Then give these documents to me, it's not like I haven't taken care of them for you before. Wuming showed a kind smile. Don't mention that to this king, get out of this king's sight immediately. Yes, if this is what King Gilgamesh wants, then I won't say anything else. You and Merlin are the same kind of people, pay attention to Enkidu for this king, and immediately leave the Uruk for this king and go to the north to support him. Then, Wuming was kicked out of the Uruk by Gilgamesh. Chapter 398. After all, this was Gilgamesh, the most ancient proud king. Wuming could not outlast him. In the end, Wuming was driven out by Gilgamesh. Oh, isn't this Lord Hyunryong? As soon as they left the tower, Merlin's frivolous voice could be heard. On the street, Wuming met Merlin, who seemed to be heading to the tower. As expected, Merlin, sometimes I really need to give you a good punch. Wuming looked at Merlin rather unhappily. Then Wuming raised his fist. That's bad, I'm not someone who can take a punch from you. Merlin faced Wuming's fist and smiled calmly. I see that you've been running a lot of errands these 2 days, Merlin. Wuming looked at Merlin gloatingly. You're right, King Gilgamesh arranged a lot of things for me. But even so, Merlin still smiled. Speaking of which, I heard that you dreamed of Tiamat? Wuming looked helplessly at Merlin. Needless to say, this guy used clairvoyance again. Wuming did not tell anyone about his dream of Tiamat. As soon as he returned, he told Gilgamesh. The only way Merlin could know about this was through the current clairvoyance. However, since Merlin mentioned it, then there must be something to say. I used clairvoyance to see Tiamat. I don't know why, but there was a black substance that I couldn't see clearly. However, it's very similar to your aura. About that guy in the north, you have to be careful. Because he knew that Wuming was about to go to the front line, he said with a slightly serious tone. That black substance should be the black mud. Back in Britain, Wuming had used his true form, which was accompanied by the unique aura of the Great Origin. Merlin naturally recognized the things that were of the same origin as Wuming. I got it. How are Tachika and the others now? Wuming nodded and asked about Chaldea. Chaldea and the others are working hard to solve the first singularity, but this is interesting. The black and white Saintess somehow reminds me of the dark Artoria. Merlin smiled, but his smile gave Wuming a bad feeling. However, with their speed, I'm afraid they won't be able to catch up with the other singularities. Wuming was a little worried. This is something that can't be helped. In the end, they still have to save their own world. With that, Merlin started walking towards the divine pagoda. Wuming did not say anything else. He had to admit that Merlin was right. Humans needed to save their own world by themselves. Whether it was Wuming, Merlin, or the heroic spirits that had died a long time ago, they were not the main characters. The main characters were humans who were constantly looking for hope in despair. When they arrived outside of Uruk City, Wuming activated his relic, transformed into a giant dragon, and flew into the clouds. Undeniably, flying was a great ability. In addition to Wuming's massive dragon relic, it only took him a day to fly around the entire Mesopotamia. Wuming first went to the southern city of Eridu. There, Wuming told the residents about Gilgamesh's new policy, which was to organize wrestling events at irregular times. Later on, Wuming and Quizhar had a fierce wrestling match. That was right. The entire Eridu could feel the vibrations from their wrestling. As Wuming was more familiar with Wuming, he did not let Quizhar have the upper hand in the wrestling match even though he did not have the upper hand. Hey, I didn't expect Hyunryong to be so talented in wrestling. I'm starting to like you more and more. Do you want to go back to South America with me? Quizhar tempted Wuming with a smile on her face. Of course, Wuming rejected Quizhar. Putting aside how far they were from South America, he did not know if Quizhar would descend in South America. Later on, Wuming instructed Quizhar to do some things. Wuming did not go there to let Quizhar participate in the battle in the north. Instead, he wanted Quizhar to wait for an opportunity and try not to expose the fact that he was no longer working with the other two goddess pillars. After Quizhar said okay, Wuming flew towards the front line in the north. It took almost half a day to fly from the southernmost to the northernmost. In addition, Wuming had started flying from Uruk in the morning. After going to the south and then coming to the north, it was already nighttime. At this time, the magical beasts had already retreated and started to rest. Although they were magical beasts, they still retained the habits of wild beasts. They rested in the wild and hunted for food during the day. However, this was also good. The tired soldiers who had been fighting the magical beasts for a day could also get sufficient rest. Wuming arrived at the city of Babylon. This was the temporary stronghold that Shiro Amakusa had set up. Wuming did not arrive in Babylon with great fanfare. Instead, when he was still some distance away from Babylon, he transformed into his human form and quietly entered Shiro Amakusa's residence in Babylon. "Welcome, Lord Hyunryong." As if he already knew that Wuming would come back, Shiro Amakusa waited for him and then respectfully greeted Wuming. "You don't have to be like this, Shiro Amakusa. Although I am Hyunryong from Uruk, you and I are both servants. You can address me as an equal." Wuming waved his hand. No matter what, the two of them were once enemies who fought to the death. Through Shiro Amakusa's speech, Wuming concluded that he still remembered everything about the 14 horsemen. Etiquette cannot be abandoned. You are the teacher of King Gilgamesh, the Uruk's Hyunryong. Even if you are a servant, you are not the same as us. Shiro Amakusa calmly shook his head. "Although I still remember the battle between you and me, the winner takes all. I have nothing to say about my defeat." Shiro Amakusa said with a smile. "You are indeed worthy of being called a saint." Wuming praised. It had to be said that Shiro Amakusa was indeed worthy of being called the saint of the Far East. He spent 60 years on his wish, but it was destroyed just like that. It was useless for him to hate Wuming. Let's not talk about this for now. Actually, there is one thing I haven't had the time to report to King Gilgamesh. Shiro Amakusa smiled casually, then his expression began to become serious. "Ibaraki Duji betrayed us." Wuming frowned. Ibaraki Duji's betrayal was naturally predicted by Wuming, but Wuming also asked Shiro Amakusa to keep an eye on Ibaraki Duji. Shiro Amakusa's strength was not high, but he was still very smart. If he could let Ibaraki Duji betray us, then it was very likely that Ibaraki Duji chose to betray us, but he did not help the other side. Am I right? Chapter 399. Shiro Amakusa had been monitoring Ibaraki Dojo. If Ibaraki Dojo went to help the other side, Shiro Amakusa, who noticed that something was wrong, would order the multiple servants present to kill Ibaraki Dojo together, but he was afraid that they would fail. Ibaraki Dojo was the only remaining ghost who was able to escape from the battle with Abe Saimai, Lai Hiroshi, and Watanabe Tsuyoshi. The reason why Gilgamesh couldn't control her with the command seal was because Gilgamesh's summoning method wasn't the standard Holy Grail war summoning method. Therefore, Gilgamesh didn't have command seals on the back of his hand. Then, Shiro Amakusa nodded with a smile. "You're right, because Ibaraki Dojo didn't go to the enemy camp, I didn't choose to stop her." Then, Shiro Amakusa pointed to a mountain range not far from Babylon. "That guy escaped to the mountain." According to Fuma Kotaro's report, Ibaraki Dojo joined forces with a group of people to become bandits. Don't think that there were no bandits in Mesopotamia. There were always people who didn't conform to discipline, who had no choice but to kill, let alone in this era of more than 2000 BC. Speaking of which, Shiro Amakusa smiled helplessly. She was clearly a powerful ghost, but now she was playing like a child, running to the mountain to become a bandit leader. Wuming was also surprised by Ibaraki Dojo's casual nature after hearing this news. "Then let's leave her alone for now. As long as she doesn't cause trouble for us, let her be a bandit leader." As long as Ibaraki Dojo didn't help the monsters, it was fine. "Where are the other servants now?" Wuming asked. "Leonidas is building the north wall with the soldiers." After all, Leonidas is good at defense. Kitasoki and Bayuzan are covering the residents in other cities. As for Fumakotaro, speaking of which, Wuming and Shiro Amakusa looked at the shadows at the same time. A ninja hiding in the shadows looked at the two of them gently, then closed his eyes. As expected of a famous ninja, he's really suitable for the assassin profession. He's been on standby this entire time. After all, the magical beasts in the wild are all resting, so there's no need for him to gather any information. Shiro Amakusa explained. Wuming nodded and prepared to head out to help Soaring Sky Headquarters and Ba Yuqian cover the retreat of the residents. Then I'll go and help them. If there's nothing important, that's all. After saying that, a white spear fell out of Wuming's sleeve. The white spear melted into the ground and turned into ripples. The holy green beast walked out of the ripples. Woo woo, Wuming rode on Funbaba, and Funbaba shouted. The ground automatically separated, and green vines appeared, enveloping Funbaba and Wuming. This should be the few remaining cities in the north. I'll look for it myself. There's no time to lose. I'll go first. Wuming's voice came from the vines. Next, the vines entered the cracked ground. Then, the ground closed up, leaving no trace behind. Is this the power of the forest's divine beast, Funbaba? It's quite powerful. Shiro Amakusa praised. I'll have to trouble you tonight. See if you can find the magical beast's lair. Then, Shiro Amakusa looked at Fumakotaro. Understood. After saying that, the figure in the shadows disappeared. The magical beasts are getting stronger, and the casualties are increasing. The soldiers are getting more and more tired. We have to speed up the construction of the north wall. With that, Shiro Amakusa returned to his room and continued with Wuming's work. Outside of Babylon, the ground cracked open, and giant vines appeared from within. The vines spread out, and Funbaba and Wuming's figures appeared. Then, the vines returned to the ground, and the cracks in the ground closed up again, leaving no trace behind. This was Funbaba's ability. As a divine beast of the forest, it could still manipulate the vines to move under the ground. But it only did this because it was afraid of affecting the residents of Babylon. Let's go there first. I remember there was a city that survived the attack of the magical beasts. After all, Wuming had intelligence. Wuming basically remembered the location of the remaining cities in the north. Wuming's current idea was that if he didn't encounter Okita-soki and Ba-Yuzan, then Wuming was ready to cover the evacuation of the people in the town. After all, the magical beasts were decreasing at night. With the cover of 2 servants, they could still safely evacuate. Under Wuming's command, Funbaba began to move. It had to be said that God really took care of Wuming. Wuming chose a city. The city in front of him was indeed the city where Okita-soki and Ba-Yuzan covered the evacuation tonight. Not far away, on the main road that connected the cities, Wu Ming saw the light of fire, the gleam of blades, and the screams of human beings. This time, it was no longer the red lion Ulidim, but countless blue crawling creatures. The tails of these creatures were high, and the poisonous needles on the tails were shining even in the dark night. Purple venom flowed on the tails as if it was about to drip down. Countless mushifu attacked the migrating humans frantically. Anyone who was stung by the mushifu's poisonous needles couldn't survive, and all of them died of poison. Okita-soki and Ba-Yuzan crazily killed these mushu. Their swords danced and flames burst. However, against these countless mushifu who only attacked the residents, the effect was like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Funbaba. Under Wuming's order, Funbaba gently stomped its foot. Countless vines emerged from the ground and instantly surrounded all the mushifu and residents. Then, the countless vines seemed to be able to distinguish between demonic beasts and humans. They turned into sharp thorns and penetrated all the mushifu. In an instant, the whole battlefield quieted down. The survivors simply paid their respects to the dead. Because of the mushifu's poison, no one dared to touch these corpses. Then, they continued on their way in grief. Funbaba gathered the corpses that had been poisoned, and Wuming used the Lune rune to burn these poisonous corpses. Of course, the corpses of the demonic beasts were also burned. After all, the poisonous corpses were not easy to deal with, and burying them would only pollute the environment. Okita-soki walked at the front, Ba-Yuzin in the middle, and Wu-Ming at the back. The three divided the work. "Thank you so much, Hyunryong-sama." Ba-Yuzin, who was walking in the middle, slowly retreated to the back and chatted with Wu-Ming. "What happened just now? Didn't you say that the demonic beasts would rest at night? Why are there so many demonic beasts moving at night?" Wu-Ming asked. "We don't know. We didn't find them when we were scouting. Then, countless demonic beasts suddenly appeared. Then you came." Ba-Yuzin was a little sad. After all, it was a sudden situation, and many people died. Although there have been demonic beast attacks before, there were only a few or a small number of them. Today, it was the first time I saw a group of demonic beasts attacking during the day. Ba-Yuzin continued. "Let's cover these residents and return to the north wall first. With Funbaba here, there won't be any problems tonight." "Woo!" Funbaba also cried out. "With demonic beast Sama and Hyunryong Sama here, I am relieved." Ba-Yuzin also nodded. In this way, Wu-Ming and the other two covered the surviving residents and arrived at Babylon. Chapter 400. What? A large number of demonic beasts attacked you, and they are a new breed of demonic beasts. Shiro Amakusa looked at Okita-soki and Ba-Yuzin and said with some surprise. After all, demonic beasts suddenly changed their habits, making it impossible to guard against them, but this was something that couldn't be helped. That is indeed the case, and the crisis was only resolved after I arrived. Wu-Ming stood aside and testified for the two. "It's not that I don't believe their words, but the sudden attack surprised me." Shiro Amakusa shook his head, indicating that he didn't doubt Okita-soki and Ba-Yuzin's words. Wu-Ming naturally understood, and then began to analyze the reason for the attack. There are two possibilities. One is that there is a commander among the demonic beasts, and the other is that these new breeds of demonic beasts fight at night. Wu-Ming proposed two possibilities. If there is a commander, the green-haired girl suspected to be Enkidu on the battlefield is very likely to be the commander. Okita-soki remembered the green-haired girl during the day. However, we can't deny that these new breeds of demonic beasts fight at night. Maybe the large number of demonic beasts just now were hatched by Tiamat. Ba-Yuzin also said, "In any case, this matter must be taken seriously. Assassin, please tell King Gilgamesh about this." With that said, Shiro Amakusa looked at Fuma Kotaro, who was standing in the shadows without speaking. Although Fuma Kotaro was sent out by Shiro Amakusa to find Tiamat's nest, because of the emergency just now, he used the communication technology to call Fuma Kotaro back. Understood. After that, Fuma Kotaro disappeared in an instant. It seems that he is going to Uruk overnight. Then you guys go and rest first. I will let Funbaba scout around Babylon to ensure that there are no enemies attacking, Wu-Ming said. They still have to deal with the attack of demonic beasts the next day. If they don't rest, it will be very unfavorable for them the next day. In that case, I will trouble Hyunryong-sama. Afterward, Okita-soki and Ba-Yuzin both retreated to rest. Early the next morning, the demonic beasts would begin to wreak havoc, so they had to rest well. "Ruler, I have something to ask you." Once only Wu-Ming and Shiro Amakusa were left in the room, Wu-Ming spoke. "Hyunryong-sama probably wants to ask about the young girl suspected to be Enkidu." Shiro Amakusa smiled. "To be honest, I'm not very familiar with that young lady. Saber and Archer have only fought with her for a short while, so I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint Lord Hyunryong." Shiro Amakusa's meaning was that they weren't clear on the girl's situation. "I see. Sorry to disturb you. I'll leave first. Funbaba is still waiting for me outside. Take care." Then Wu-Ming left the place. In the room, Wu-Ming, who had left the room, had a serious expression on his face. After all, the Enkidu in that world was saved by Wu-Ming and brought to the root to be upgraded. However, the Enkidu in this world did not. Wu-Ming was worried that Enkidu had been modified by Tiamat and was being used by her. Clank, the sound of chains could be heard. The heaven lock that was attached to Wu Ming's clothes moved automatically and stroked Wu Ming's cheeks. Wu Ming touched the chains and took the opportunity to calm down. Wu Ming came to Uruk through the Holy Grail. Since the heaven lock had become his rider, knight, noble phantasm, Enkidu's consciousness naturally followed him. Sama, please don't be confused. A gentle voice appeared in Wu Ming's mind. If I'm really modified by Tiamat in this world, then all you have to do is to defeat me. If someone impersonates my body, then all you have to do is to punish that person. Although it's my body, I believe that Enkidu in this world will agree with what you're doing. The golden chains glowed faintly as they communicated with Wu Ming through telepathy. I'm not that weak. I'm just a little hesitant. Really, Wu Ming said with a bitter smile. Don't worry. Your body has done something wrong. I'll punish her properly. You don't have to worry about that. The golden chains rubbed Wu Ming a few times and then returned to Wu Ming's clothes. When he came out of the courtyard, Funbaba was lying on the ground waiting. Because of the concealment spell that Wu Ming had set up, none of the residents noticed Funbaba. Let's go, Funbaba. There's work to be done. Woo, because almost all of the northern cities had fallen, a large number of people were forced to move south. Now, the residents of the northern cities were either dead or had come to Babylon and Nippur. There were very few refugees left in other cities, but just in case, Bai Yuqian continued to search and rescue. The refugees tonight were an example. Now, almost all of the refugees had gathered in Babylon and Nippur, preparing to retreat through these two cities to the north wall that was under construction. Therefore, there were a large number of refugees in Babylon. Coupled with the refugees who had just migrated tonight, Babylon was actually very crowded. If there was a sudden attack by a magical beast in the middle of the night, not to mention the soldiers, these refugees would at least be buried here. Of course, that was in the absence of Wu Ming and other servants. Wu Ming took Funbaba to the outside of Babylon. With the activation of Funbaba's ability, countless vines were hidden around the city of Babylon. As long as any magical beast passed by, these vines would have an alarm effect. Not only could it trap the magical beast, but it could also let Funbaba know, so that they could start to defend against the magical beast attack. Tonight, I'll leave it to you, Funbaba. Wu Ming touched Funbaba's head. Woo, Funbaba replied. Although it was said that he got rid of Funbaba, Wu Ming was not ready to go to sleep, but he was ready to stay up all night. Wu Ming looked at the bright moon in the sky and could not help but miss the days with Enkidu and Gilgamesh. At that time, the king was still young, the weapons did not understand the human heart, and the god was still a weak guy. Now, everything had changed. The king became very clear, the weapons also understood the human heart and gained friendship, and the god also became strong and had the power to protect others. In the distance, Gilgamesh put down the clay board in his hand and went to the window to enjoy the full moon. I haven't seen the Uruk moon for a long time, as boring as ever. Gilgamesh said indifferently, but his eyes did not leave the moon. In the north, the girl with long green hair looked at the corpse of the magical beast that had been burned to ashes and looked up at the bright moon. For a moment, the girl did not say anything and left here and returned to the northern mountains. Chapter 401. The next day, a night passed, and there were no demonic beasts. Funbaba hid the vines around Babylon in case of emergency. Wu Ming did not choose to return to Babylon, but stayed outside. Last night, Shiro Amakusa told Wu Ming that because the demonic beasts were getting stronger and stronger, every time the soldiers resisted, they would suffer a lot of damage. Therefore, Shiro Amakusa began to use defensive tactics. Because Babylon was not suitable for defense, everyone set up traps and various defensive measures in the north of Babylon. The purpose was to resist the attack of the demonic beasts. Now, Babylon's army had been assembled, and the reason why Wu Ming did not choose to return to Uruk was because Wu Ming wanted to personally meet these demonic beasts. After waiting for a few minutes, it was time for the demonic beasts to attack. Roar! Hiss! The roar of the demonic beasts could be heard. The red lion and the blue poison-tailed lizard came from afar. Like a group of rushing red and blue sea, the two types of demonic beasts mixed together and attacked Babylon. There are so many demonic beasts, even with the help of servants, they can't stop them. Wu Ming frowned. After all, such a group of demonic beasts was not something that Shiro Amakusa and the other servants could resist. It seems like what Shiro Amakusa said is true. These days, the demonic beasts have begun to become stronger. After saying that, Wu Ming got down from Funbaba and began to prepare magic. Although I came as a rider, I can still use Loon magic and Yggdrasil, World Tree, magic. After saying that, Wu Ming raised both of his hands, one hand drew something, and the other hand lit up a magic circle. Flame, ice, holy light, black fog, vines, water blade, rock, countless low-level magic were cast by Wu Ming, facing the demonic beasts rushing toward this side. It had to be said that no matter how powerful a magical beast was, it would be akin to a moth darting into a flame if it were to use its physical body to charge at Lin Li. Roar! Hiss! The magic beast's blood-curdling screams kept echoing as one magic beast after another collapsed, turning into pure mana and disappearing. This might be the price of magic beasts becoming stronger. Ever since the magic beasts started to become more powerful, the magic beasts that died would turn into mana and disappear instead of leaving behind a physical body. However, this was also good. If the corpses were left behind, it would be troublesome to clean up the battlefield. As expected, they're just a bunch of beasts that only know how to kill. They don't have the ability to scheme at all. Wu Ming said with some disdain. If it wasn't for the fact that there were too many magical beasts, the intelligence of the people in each city would have been enough to defend against them. But this is also good. There's no need to care too much about things like props, Funbaba, Wu Ming said to Funbaba. Woo, Funbaba responded, taking a step forward and slightly straightening its body. Countless vines broke out of the ground, like a huge python, soaring into the sky. Some entangled the magic beasts, like a blender, crushing their prey. Some were like sharp blades, piercing through the magic beasts. Some simply tore their prey apart. Fortunately, these magic beasts would immediately turn into pure mana and disappear after death, so there was no need to care about the blood or the piling up of corpses. Although the magic beasts suffered heavy losses, the remaining magic beasts didn't shrink back. As if they didn't know that there was nothing, the other magic beasts still rushed forward one after another. Sure enough, props born for battle. Looking at these magic beasts rushing forward one after another, Wu Ming shook his head disinterestedly. In that case, all return to the underworld. Wu Ming used a more powerful move, like a cannon, constantly bombarding the attacking magic beasts. Funbaba also worked harder, attacking the magic beasts in the gaps of the explosions caused by Wu Ming's skills. It had to be said that the cooperation between the two was perfect. The violent explosions even changed the terrain, creating craters one after another. Countless vines emerged from the gaps between the explosions, creating even more craters and wiping out the lone magic beasts one after another. Soon, countless pits joined together, turning the northern plains of Babylon into a basin. Almost a few minutes later, Wu Ming and Funbaba stopped attacking. Smoke filled the northern part of Babylon, and countless magic beasts turned into pure mana particles, leaving only the changed terrain, proving that the magic beasts once existed. However, Wu Ming didn't show an expression that he had finished, but looked at the smoke in front of him solemnly. The number of magic beasts couldn't be this small. There was no doubt that the magic beasts that only knew how to attack temporarily retreated. If that was the case, then there must be something similar to a commander. Could it be? Just as Wu Ming was worried, a figure walked out of the smoke. Long green hair, a rare beauty, and white clothes that didn't have a single speck of dust on them. Without a doubt, this was Enkidu, who was originally dead. Putting that aside, Wu Ming sensed a special energy from Enkidu's body. Then Wu Ming spoke. As expected, the rest of the magic beasts retreated under your command. Wu Ming looked at Enkidu with an indescribable expression. Master Hyunryong, long time no see. Enkidu said to Wu Ming as if they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Don't give me that. Am I worth it? You're not Enkidu. Wu Ming's expression didn't change at all as he said calmly. As expected, pretending in front of me will definitely get exposed. Enkidu said self-deprecatingly, then showed a proud expression. To be honest, this body misses you very much. I can't help but respect and love you, Master Hyunryong. Enkidu smiled calmly and didn't feel annoyed that he was exposed. Although you're using Enkidu's body, your performance is too different from Enkidu's. I can tell that you're a fake with one look. Wu Ming said calmly. It can't be helped, I'm just a fake. Enkidu didn't get angry at Wu Ming's words and replied with a smile. Let me tell you, I'm very angry that I'm using Enkidu's body. Wu Ming closed his eyes, then suddenly opened them and looked at Enkidu. This gaze made Enkidu tremble with fear, as if he was looking directly at death. A trace of cold sweat trickled down his back. Let's put this aside for now. I'm going to ask you directly, is your heart the Holy Grail? That you're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.